All right, welcome everybody back to the Smogon VGC Major Live 2026. We are getting started with our day two Swiss rounds in just a moment, but we just want to take a little bit to chat about the teams and the metagame and what's been going on in the tournament so far. My name is Eric, and I'm joined by Sven. Yeah, what are your impressions of the tournament so far?
I haven't been able to watch that much yesterday, but I was looking through the teams like half an hour before of this, and I think you see a lot of people still hanging on to like an MA meta game. I saw some teams still running like the big six with just like the Life Orb on either the Basque Legion or on the Garchomp. But I've also seen some more innovative teams with like a Swampert Drain is something that I think is quite often which has performed, I think, decently well. And I've also seen quite a bit of Star Raptor teams, but I think the win rate of that is not so good so far. So maybe it's on a fraud watch.
Yeah, definitely seeing a little bit of a nice mix between the old and the new here. I know definitely, I think the main story of these first few tournaments of Regulation MB is how the new stuff is going to compare with the old reliable classics. We just saw, I think, Delphox just won, or no, sorry, like a Floette Balance team just won the Victory Road tournament, even though we saw
Yeah.
some great performances from Swampert Rain, which is pretty prevalent out there in the meta right now. But like you said, people are still holding on to the old reliable classics such as Big Six, and swapping a Pokemon or an item here and there just to make the team feel a little bit more newer and up to date. But yeah, I think in these current standings we have here, like yeah, we still have Floette Delphox at 8-0, and we still have a Big Six adjacent team. I know a lot of players have been subbing out Floette for Golden Go, which has been doing pretty well as that sort of secondary option that doesn't require a mega slot. But I mean, looking down the standings right now, I mean, like you just see a lot of like very familiar teams. Obviously, the Floette Delphox team still doing really good. The Big Six archetypes, either with or without Floette. Aerodactyl, Sylveon, King Gambit, much like the team that just won NAIC. And then we see some new stuff here. Elizabeth obviously doing really well with Pyroar yesterday. Showcasing that on stream was really fun. Obviously, Metagross and Swampert taking up a couple spots here and there. But yeah, it seems a lot of the teams that are doing very well are quite familiar. But it's interesting to see Golden Go still doing well despite everybody kind of freaking out about the nerfs to Make It Rain and kind of questioning where Golden Go is going to find a spot in the metagame. But I think it's a pretty good option to have still because of how strong it is just period as a Pokemon, and you can just offset the negative side effects of Make It Rain with either Nasty Plot or just going for straight up damage and maybe just pivoting in and out. So a lot of interesting mix we have so far.
Yeah, I especially think with the Golden Go sets, I've seen some nasty plots, but I think the sets that's been mostly used by now have been mostly, I think, Scarf and either Life Orb Tree attack with Power Gem, especially since some of the Charizards that are being run right now are either, I think, they dropping bulk because Life Orb Rock Slide will kill you, or they go like extremely bulky. I've seen some like almost max HP, max defense Charizards to like hit the so you still live a Rock Slide from the Life Orb Chomp, so that achieves you with a Power Gem to still Oko the Zard. I think the Nasty Plot set in general is going to see less play because I think it's quite prone to just like protect the one slot you want, switch in like an Incineroar, drop -2, and then you're basically in a position where you're at neutral again, and you face probably a resist that can do a lot of damage into you or just disrupt the field.
Yeah, I think like you said, the introduction of Life Orb is kind of a huge deal because it allows some Pokemon to just get over the edge in terms of those calcs. Like the the classic Charizard spreads were very much tailor made to live those weaker rock slides from Pokemon like Garchomp, but now the addition of Life Orb just makes those calcs kind of irrelevant now. So I feel like it's kind of pushing Charizard sets, like you said, to either end of the spectrum, like either extreme. They're either going super defensive and bulky to try and just get the maximum amount of bulk to maybe try to live those rock slides again, but at the cost of some speed and some special attack, or just going straight out hyper offensive, just saying, you know what, I know I'm not going to survive these powerful rock type attacks in the metagame anyway, and I'm just going to go try and focus all out on damage and speed to try to maybe get the advantage in those mirror matches just to be the faster Charizard. But yeah, also with a Pokemon like Golden Go, like it begs the question, like how, if you are running that nasty plot set, like how easily are you going to be able to get that nasty plot up? Because there's a lot of hostility to Golden Go in the metagame right now because you have Incineroar, you have King Gambit, you have Basque Legions are starting to run Scarf again, so always having that last respects lurking in the back makes it a little tough for Golden Go to kind of sit on the field for a long time. And also, there's no Terra in the game anymore, so you don't have the luxury of just being able to change your type at will and flip the defensive matchups that make it easier for you to get those nasty plots set up here. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting development, and we'll have to see how these sets sort of evolve as the metagame goes on. But it looks like we might be getting into our first matchup here. We have, I believe these are this is an 8-0 matchup. We have VGC Brain going up against Sapo Volante. We have a look at the Sapo Volante's team on the stream right now, which is looking pretty familiar to us who are watching NAIC.
Yeah, I feel like this is basically just a team that won NAIC by Francesco Pio Perro, but just as we talked about with the addition of like the Garchomp now carrying a Life Orb. The rest, if I'm looking at the sets, I don't see anything that catches my eye. Maybe you can say the Focus Sash. I think that's the variation that Eric Rios might have run, but to be honest, this just looks like a standard team, and it's proven that it still works because it's 8-0, so we'll see how far it can go today on the stream.
Yeah, I think it definitely looks a little bit more reminiscent of the Eric Rios variant with the Ice Fang on the Aerodactyl, the Focus Sash on the King Gambit, the more offensively oriented Garchomp, and I mean, I guess there is Protect on the Farigiraf instead of Thunderbolt, so that's just a stylistic decision that I think works really, really well. I was a big believer in the Focus Sash King Gambit set because I think you just get a lot of mileage of being faster than stuff like Incineroar. You can just do a lot of damage to them if you manage to get the Defiant boost. You put them in pretty easy KO range of like anything else on the team. I think the idea is that you have Aerodactyl that can just Rock Slide to soften up Incineroar, and then if you have the +1 King Gambit, Low Cake just picks up the knockout. So, and with King Gambit having Focus Sash, you're just guaranteed to live a hit. And a lot of people are caught off guard by the faster King Gambit. But looking at VGC Brain's team here, we have yet another team that should look pretty familiar. However, it is one of the examples of the Big Six archetypes that is using Golden Go instead of that Mega Floette.
Yeah, I think if I'm looking at this team, no King Gambit anymore is what also has been changed. What slot is it again? Because the Golden Go has been changed from the Floette, and then you have like Incineroar over.
Yeah, Incineroar over the King Gambit slot, I believe.
Over the King Gambit slot, yeah. So you still keep your Steel type in the Golden Go, because it wouldn't make a lot of sense to me to run it both Kodengo and what is it called? Yeah, Golden Go and King Gambit. But yeah, I think the biggest difference here is that normally on Big Six you see Basque Legions running the Mystic Water set, and this one is opting for a standard Scarf set. Besides that, this just looks like, yeah, as we just said, Big Six, Life Orb Chomp, Golden Go. Basically it, honestly. Not much interesting to say besides these teams. We're all familiar with it, and it's still proving that it's very strong, and still the teams to beat in the metagame at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting how Choice Scarf Basque Legion has kind of come back into the fold because it was kind of on its way out at the end of Regulation MA, but I think it's kind of come back as a way to sort of matchup check the new Pokemon in the format, just to be like, hey, like, these Pokemon are good and all, but, Choice Scarf Basque Legion still is kind of the default thing that we were all prepping for in Team Preview back in Regulation MA, and just like, the extra speed that you get from Choice Scarf does help you a little bit in the Tailwind Mirror if they are not running like a Focus Sash Basque Legion to be able to soak up one Last Respects before dishing one back. So it does give you a little bit of an edge in the Tailwind Mirror match. So it's it's a Pokemon that still sees a lot of usage now, and especially with Pokemon like Golden Go, like you don't have that priority being able to threaten from like something like King Gambit. So Basque Legion can just outspeed a lot of these Pokemon in the Tailwind Mirrors and then just clean up the game with Last Respect. So it's like a very familiar matchup, but it's got some new stuff going for it, and I'm interested to see how these teams will interact with each other. I do think Aerodactyl and King Gambit are kind of the it's a pretty favored lead by this kind of archetype, and I think it does really well into these kind of Whimsicott teams because you have Aerodactyl that can just match the Tailwinds, and King Gambit that can just eat a hit, and it threatens the Incineroar leads and everything. So yeah, definitely some really good tools in this matchup as well. And then you have the Life Orb Garchomps on either side, both Jolly Nature, so we can assume that they're the fastest that they can be. So those two will probably be facing off at some point in this matchup. So Yeah, it's a little bit of the old, little bit of the new, familiar yet unfamiliar at the same time. But these are probably some of the uh, best teams, best archetypes in the metagame right now, and there's a reason that they're both 8-0.
Yeah, we're also having, if you just look at the player names here, apparently from what we just heard, Sapo has no big accomplishments yet, so they're trying to make a name for themselves. So probably a relative new player here, and on the other hand, VGC Brain is apparently the 2011 World Champion and the 2012 Juniors runners-up at Worlds. So I guess at this point a Masters, but apparently around for a long time already in the VGC scene. Never really heard of them before.
Yeah, 2011 is that's definitely eons ago in VGC times. But yeah, still making really good progress here, and I think that would make them a master at this point because it's been yeah like 15
Yeah,
years at that
definitely.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Hmm.
uh, yeah, still having some good results here in the Masters division here in the Smogon tournament, and yeah, like it's nice to showcase a player with some lesser known accomplishments. VGC being more accessible than ever, a lot of influx of new players into the game, and a lot of them have already started to make pretty big waves in the scene. So it'll also be a matchup of some established player talent versus some relatively new talent. So we'll have to see um, how these players square up with one another. They've obviously been playing super well so far, using probably some of the best archetypes that Regulation, MA, and MB have to offer. So we should be getting into the matchup pretty soon. But yeah, I think this will be an exciting 8-0 matchup to showcase.
Yeah, I agree. And something that just caught my eye about this team we're seeing on the screen right now is actually the ice thing on the Aerodactyl. So I've seen it before in MA a little bit, but then afterwards it got dropped again. I don't know my calcs, but I assume you're running Ice Fan because it OHKOs Garchomp, but I'm not too sure about that.
Yeah, with the Tough Claws boost, you can pretty much guarantee that you KO uh, I think most, if not all, Garchomp. So it kind of allows Aerodactyl to be like sort of a Swiss Army knife in the Sun matchup. So you have Rock Slide to deal with Charizard, you have Ice Fang to deal with Garchomp, and then you have Tailwind to sort of maintain the speed. So it just kind of allows Aerodactyl to be a catch-all in these sort of Sun matchups. So it's a very nice addition. It does drop dual Wing Beat, so you become a little less effective into dealing with things like Whimsicott. You can't just immediately remove it off the field. But that is kind of a tricky mind game sometimes because you have to be like, okay, do I go for dual wing beat to get rid of the Whimsicott, or do I match the tailwinds and risk getting encored? So it's it's a droppable move, but Aerodactyl is a pretty customizable move set. But speaking of Aerodactyl, we're going to see Aerodactyl Charizard leading off from Sapo's side, and VGC Brain is going to be leading off with Whimsicott and Basculegion.
Yeah, I think both teams will be opting to just straight up set a Tailwind here because the Whimsicott can threaten Encore, but there's always the Mind Game with the Farigiraf. The Charizard, I think, is in a pretty safe spot to attack here because of the item choice on this Basculegion, where normally with Mystic Water, you'd be able to pick up the Charizard if you're in Tailwind still, even in Sun. But now because it's running the Scarf, the Charizard, unless a critical hit happens, is bound to live a hit. So it's pretty free to either just try to threaten a Solar Beam into the Basculegion or just hit the Heat Wave and get the Whimsicott onto the Sash.
Yeah, this might force Basculegion to have to pivot out here, but the good news is you do get sort of a free attack into the Aerodactyl if you want. It's going to be a weaker water attack, of course, as the Charizard is going to Mega Evolve and have
Yeah.
the Drought ability. Wave Crash
Ooh.
into the Aerodactyl, not quite able to pick up the knockout. It lives on just 1%, as this allows Aerodactyl to match the Tailwind. And like you said, Charizard just gets a free hit off here with the Heat Wave, dealing a respectful amount to Basculegion and knocking Whimsicott down to Sash. So Aerodactyl now facing the threat of Encore. We'll have to see if Sapo wishes to save this Aerodactyl maybe in the back for a potential Charizard or resetting of the Tailwind later. But yeah, Basculegion just might just try to get as much damage as it wants here, or maybe just try to pivot out and maybe save itself for a last respect sweep in later. But Charizard looking like in a position where it can just keep clicking attacks if it wants to.
Yeah, we're gonna see the Kingambit switch in here, and also the Whimsicott, so both preserving the options they have for Tailwind later in the game. And as you said, the Basculegion probably just sacking itself,
Ooh.
but actually the Heatwave miss. That's actually huge. Wow.
That's I guess that's not the worst thing in the world for Sapo because you did manage to pivot the King Gambit in here, especially without it taking a hit to its Focus Sash. So you do threaten Sucker Punch on either of these Pokemon. I believe a Sucker Punch plus a Heat Wave might be enough to get rid of this Charizard. So the Charizard speed interaction here might be important to learn for this game one. Basculegion, like you said, maybe knows it's on its way out. So maybe, in order to respect the or the wave crash into the Charizard, maybe we'll just want to stay on the field. But no, the Sucker Punch actually whiffs into the Garchomp switch in. We do see that VGC Brain's Charizard does move first, and
Oh wow.
unfortunately, Sapo's Charizard is going to miss
Oh
another
man.
Heat Wave. Which could be important because, like I was saying earlier, that could have made the difference of it being in Sucker Punch range. But Garchomp managing to find a good position here.
Yeah, I think this Charizard needs to go back to the training a little bit, learn those Heat Waves to hit, because it's having a big impact on this game. Because this Heat Wave miss, although you might think it's not as big at first glance, but now this probably Charizard is not in Sucker Punch range anymore, so it might actually change a lot of how this matchup will go. So yeah, it's looking like a really good position here for the Godango player, and like yeah, very tough decision. 2 turns of stun, both tailwind. I'm interested to see how they're trying to get back into this game.
Yeah, what's a little bit tricky for Sapo's side is that, like, so many, like half the team is basically hanging on to its last little percent of HP. You have Aerodactyl at 1%, you have Charizard at 12, so those are basically a knockout range of whatever. So maybe just switching in the Aerodactyl potentially to sacrifice it. Garchomp actually going for Protect here, but potentially scouting out the Charizard's Protect, as Charizard on VGC Brain's side, knowing comfortably that it is faster, just goes up for another Heat Wave, as we see Garchomp on the opposing side come in here. And we know these Charizard are these Garchomps are both Jolly Nature, so this might indicate that there is a speed tie coming if they potentially want to play that game here. So, and they're both Life Orb, so they do threaten knockouts on each other with Dragon Claw. So we'll have to see if they decide to play the speed tie game here. But there is still a Whimsicott in the back if VGC Brain is able to pivot that Pokemon in and maybe try to just solidify the speed advantage with a Prankster Tailwind.
Yeah, I think there's a relatively safe play here because I think your Basque Legion has kind of done its job already, especially because that the Heatwave miss, it's still alive. You'd be able to just protect your own Garchomp, switch out to Charizard, but I guess we're just playing speed tie games here. I guess that's also an option if you're confident that you're going to win it. And I think, yeah, that's just basically game here.
Yeah, I sort of understand the rationale behind it because, like, from VGC Brain's end, you're like so far ahead in the game that you could maybe risk the speed tie and be comfortable if you lose your Garchomp to it and maybe get some chip damage with the rough skin, and then makes Garchomp have to take a heat wave. So like maybe the chip damage is fine, but also from Sapo's side, you're so far behind that winning that speed tie potentially has the potential to swing the momentum back into your favor. So I understand the logic there. But I mean, unfortunately, Sapo not getting the better end of a potential speed tie, and yeah, unfortunately, going to lose this first game. So going into the next game, what do you think the adjustment here for Sapo is going into the second game?
Well, it's a bit tough to say. I think you might try to lead with like a Garchomp to not let your Zard take too much damage, but apparently I guess it's the Sylveon here. So opting for a strong fairy attack to probably, I think the game plan he's going here for, so kill this Whimsicott on turn 1 and just try to stall the Tailwind and then maybe potentially get your Aerodactyl in later and get like a sweep going in there with like a Garchomp and an Aerodactyl in the back. But I'm interested to see what Basque Legions are going to do this turn, because last game we saw it actually go just for straight up a wave crash. But if it does that again, it's probably prone to being killed by a solar beam, or I think honestly, it might just be a double KO if from Heat Wave plus Hyper Voice plus the recoil. So interested to see how the Basque Legion is going to opt, because if you're looking at Brain's team, there's not really a very safe switch into Heat Wave plus Hyper Voice. I guess there's your own Charizard, but are you comfortable letting it take probably like 50 to 60% damage for just switching in and not doing anything yet? So I think this is a lot better spot already here for Sapo than the previous game.
Yeah, leading off with Charizard, I think, is smart, just because you have to respect Whimsicott and Basque Legion as a lead, like, so much. Usually, with Mystic Water, you have to respect it a lot more because, like you were explaining earlier, even in Sun, the Mystic Water boosted Wave Crash is able to KO most, if not all, Charizards. But getting the Sun up here just makes Basque Legion a lot less
Mm.
effective. And I think recognizing that the Wave Crash is probably just going to go into the Charizard, try to get as much damage off as possible, going to protect, and a rare instance where Mega Evolving and wasting a turn of your Sun on Charizard is actually beneficial here because you set up the Sun so that in case the Wave Crash goes into Sylveon, it weakens the damage there. So Sylveon able to get a nice big hyper voice off into Basket Legion. We're going to see Farigiraf actually make an appearance here as the Sylveon goes for Protect. That Wave Crash absolutely doing pitiful damage, but Farigiraf for its trouble is going to be taking a double up here, which, I mean, fortunately does not get into Citrus Berry range, and I think we know that the double up here may not be enough to get rid of this Farigiraf, so maybe there is a Trick Room coming here, but there is another Wave Crash, does about 25%. Yep,
Yes,
Farigiraf
it
going to
lives.
hang on 7%. Sylveon gets another free Hyper Voice, still relatively untouched throughout this game, and now the Trick Room is up for this Sylveon.
Yeah, I think really, really well played by Sapo all the turns so far, because identifying on turn 1 there, where if Whimsicott just stays in and you get a double KO, he's in a great spot, but by protecting your own Charizard, you prevent him from sacking the Basket Legion and getting Guard Jump in against your Charizard and Sylveon in Tailwind. So really good identify, and now with the Trick Room up, it seems like this Sylveon next to Farigiraf will just be able to sweep Brain Steam.
Yeah, I do like the Trick Room adjustment as well, because we pretty much know that Sapo's team is slower. I think we confirmed that, the Charizard is slower. I mean, you have obviously the slower options like Farigiraf and Sylveon, and you're facing down a Scarf Basket Legion, a faster Charizard, a Jolly Garchomp. You're facing down so many fast Pokemon here that I think you feel comfortable going for a Trick Room game plan. And unfortunately, the Hyper Voice is going to miss out on the KO here, so this allows Charizard to pick up a double KO with Heat Wave. That is sort of the downside of Farigiraf and Sylveon. You don't really have the best ways of breaking through the Charizard. I mean, the special attack drop was actually huge there, because I think without that, you would have been able to pick up the knockout on Charizard. And now with just Charizard and King Gambit, Garchomp is still looking a little problematic even in the Trick Room.
Yeah, it's gonna depend on the next turn, but I feel like you're still in a good position, because I think we saw from last game that that Brain's Charizard is the faster one outside of Tailwind. Outside of Trick Room, my apologies. And then inside, I think the Zard will be faster. So I'm pretty sure that a Heat Wave plus Kowtow and then another Sucker Punch will just be able to get the kill. I guess it might just come down to a Sucker Punch mind game between Garchomp and King Gambit.
Yeah, provided this Charizard is actually able to hit its Heat Waves this time, I think I believe in VGC Brain's position a little bit more, or I believe in that position a little bit more if it's actually able to connect. But interestingly enough, this King Gambit will have to attack into this Garchomp
Oh,
and want to
wow.
see if Life Orb Earthquake is maybe enough to get it, and it is able to get the
Ooh,
King
it is.
Gambit here. And now since
Wow.
Garchomp lives, the Life Orb recoil allows it to get the single target Rock Slide, does connect onto the Charizard, and we're going to have a double down to end this set, but that is going to be a 2-0 victory in favor of VGC Brain here.
Yeah, I'm honestly really surprised by this. I thought it was still looking pretty good, but I guess in the end, the special attack job on the Farigiraf was detrimental here for Sapo. So Brain taking the win here, another clean 2-0 set, and moving on to 9-0. Do you know how many rounds we'll have and how many you will need for Top Cut?
I believe we'll have 12 rounds total, so I think one more win will lock up a spot in Top Cut. So it's those with the X and 2 records will move on to the asymmetrical Top Cut. So I think with 12 rounds, we will, yeah, these players will need to reach 10 wins in order to advance to Top Cut. So, I mean, both of these players still in fantastic positions to reach Top Cut. Just have to go even on the day, just have to split 2 and 2. But yeah, what a crazy game. That special attack drop into the Farigiraf mattering so much more than we thought originally. But yeah, I think the biggest thing about that end game position is that if King Gambit wants to attack into the Garchomp, it's going to have to break its own Focus Sash. And since these King Gambits are not opting for any bulk investment since they're Focus Sash, it probably comes at the detriment of Life Orb, facing down a Life Orb Garchomp, because you're just not able to hang on to those attacks and potentially set yourself up to Sucker Punch the Garchomp in the end game. And Garchomp just able to pick up that knockout on the King Gambit, set itself up for the Trick Room to disappear, and then just have to hit the Rock Slide, and Garchomp managed to come in clutch there and close out the game. So really tight end game there, but the margins were so thin.
Yeah, and I think if you're Sapo, I would not even be disappointed with how that set went, because I think in general you played really, really well, especially game 2 with identifying the early game, playing it basically perfectly, but unfortunately the RNG was not on his side this time around. So maybe have a little talk with your mons for the next round and then lock in and get a new win and get yourself one round closer to Top Cut.
Yeah, definitely a bounce backable position for Sapo here. Very well played from both sides. We only got a few games left in the round, so we will be back with the next round shortly. But don't go anywhere. More action from the Smogon VGC Live Tour Day 2 coming up soon. Welcome back, everybody, to the Smogon VGC Live Tournament 2026. We are back with another round of Day 2. My name is Eric, and I'm joined once again by Sven here. This is Swiss round number 10, and we're going to be showcasing a matchup between Squidero and Michael Derbesti. Michael Derbesti, obviously a name that most of you probably recognize at this point. Finalist at Worlds, semi-finalist at Worlds, top 8 at Worlds. You know, he's one of the best players out there in the world right now. Squidero, a relatively newer player, I think, from our first impressions. They said this is one of their first uh, big tournaments here, so going to be seeing another clash here potentially for between a veteran and a newer player, so that should be interesting as always to watch. Looking at these teams here, I anticipate a bit more of a slow-paced matchup. We kind of saw like Tailwind aggro going at each other last round, but I anticipate, judging by these teams, that we're going to see a much slower game for this next round.
Yeah, we're gonna see this. If we're looking at Scudero's team, we're gonna see the classic Delphox setup team together with a Floette as your setup options, with a double fake out and your Sinistra with redirection. Yeah, if I'm just looking at this team, we're gonna see the Focus Hashnis with Poison Touch. I guess we're switching to Michael's team as well. So Michael's team actually running also a setup team, but this time we're seeing a Raichu Y and a Cerulege. So some new mons here, paired with the Milotic set with Coil Hypnosis. That's always a pain to play against, no matter what you use, because it's basically so dumb. And then, yeah, it's gonna be a setup match mirror basically, but I think Cerulege is having a pretty good matchup here.
Yeah, I do like Cerulege in theory if the object is dealing with the opposing Floette. I mean, obviously the dueling Floettes is obviously, you know, it comes down to speed, and I think Michael has the edge here because they have the timid Floette here. But I think Floette and Cerulege in tandem could be really problematic for Squidero's team. Obviously, you have stuff like Incineroar to slow down the boosts with Intimidate, and also King Gambit here to potentially threaten some more dark type damage. But the unfortunate problem with that is that this Cerulege is holding the Colbur Berry, so no immediate pressure from dark type attacks here. So we'll have to see how Squidero is going to navigate this Cerulege and also the faster Floette. This King Gambit, interestingly, doesn't have Iron Head, so that's yet another option that Squidero just doesn't have to deal with this Floette. And you know, it kind of begs the question: is like, do you want to play the Floette game, or do you want to potentially bring Delphox in order to, you know, threaten Psyshock onto Floette? But interestingly, Psyshock is going to be a little bit less effective into Cerulege. We kind of saw this at NAIC when I believe Justin Tang and Dawe played on stream. We saw how after it's so many bulk ups, like Delphox just literally can't do anything against Cerulege. So, I mean, this matchup may end up being a little bit tough, but I mean, it's gonna come down to who can position their pieces better. But Squidero gonna lead off with that Delphox and King Gambit into Michael's Raichu and Milotic.
Yeah, we're gonna see how this Raichu is gonna end up performing, because as we saw in the moveset, it carries Focus Blast, and I feel like Focus Blast, it has 70% accuracy, but it never really feels like it. So no fake out at all, we're just gonna see a straight up Zap Cannon into this Delphox and the Para, and a Coil from the Milotic. So a really good start for Michael here, because the Delphox is now probably slower than Milotic, depending on how it's trained. And the Raichu is taking a lot. Like, Raichu Y is very offensive, but it basically doesn't carry any bulk. So this Delphox not in a great spot because of the paralysis.
Yeah, I like this game plan here from Michael here, just trying to just threaten the Zap Cannon straight up. It is guaranteed paralysis every time it hits, so it's like a method of speed control in and of itself, and then you just have the Milotic to just sit there and boost, because outside of the Mega Pokemon on this team, I mean, unless you count Sinistcha, but I mean, Sinistcha not really the most offensive Pokemon here, but yeah, two Zap Cannons able to just remove Delphox immediately, and you know, like with the majority of this team's damage being physical, like if Milotic starts get going on coils, like what can Sneasler and King Gambit do reasonably to break through this core? And Raichu's still basically the fastest thing on the field. Does have to watch out for fake out here, but this is a pretty easy switch in for the Cerulege. Milotic can just go for protect, and King Gambit maybe can try to get a hit off here. Unfortunately, whiffs a sucker punch into the, I'm assuming, switch in Cerulege. So I mean, Milotic is looking like it's in a pretty good spot to start spreading hypnosis.
Yeah, we're gonna see the Dire Claw, see if it can actually. Wow, there's
Ooh.
a sleep. That's huge. That's absolutely huge. Because this will prevent the King Gambit from going to sleep and allows a counter cleave into the Sarah Ledge, doing 40% thanks to that Cobra Berry. So that's actually a crucial and yeah, crucial sleep to stay into this game, because if that does not happen, Milotic will be able to get an Hypnosis off and most likely hit a Gambit, and then it's an entirely different game that's probably in favor of Michael. But we're gonna see how this is gonna end up now. Oh, and the poison. Sneasler is doing its Sneasler things, and Milotic stays asleep for now.
Yeah, that's one way you can sort of make mileage in this game if you're Squidero is just, click the Dire Claw button and see what it gives you. A sleep is definitely very impactful because it just slows down this Milotic's ability to spread status and also potentially boost itself a little bit more. But the Sarah Ledge, the Shadow Sneak was a really good play, gets around the Sucker Punch, but unfortunately not going to get around the Sucker Punch this time as it is going to get KO'd there. Milotic is going to wake up. It fires. Oh, King Gambit dodges the Hypnosis too. So interestingly, Coil, you need 2 boosts to make Hypnosis 100% accurate. 1 boost is not going to quite get you there. And unfortunately, Michael just not really facing the good side of RNG in this first game. As we're going to see Incineroar show up here. So it does give King Gambit the boost, but you do have a fake out here.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how this is going to go. This Incineroar will be able to take a hit, but I'm also going to be interested to see how the speed interactions are going to be between Incineroar and King Gambit here, because we saw last set it had a focus sash, so very fast, but I guess just going for a fake out for the Sneasler and trying to get this King Gambit to sleep with the Hypnosis. So Michael trying to get his way back into this game after a crucial sleep earlier. Sneasler just hitting the close combat into the Incineroar, taking a solid amount of damage. Probably gonna survive another one, but it's dead. And wow, an accuracy drop, but a critical hit. What a set. So this looks like Michael's gonna take this game 1.
Yeah, the critical hit there, possibly mattering to pick up that knockout onto King Gambit. So Michael escaping the trap of, early RNG against the Milotic and the Sarah Ledge. But yeah, I mean, Milotic, I think, was just in such a good position at this point to where, like, I mean, it doesn't have anything like recover. So, I mean, like, the extra chip damage that Squidera was getting every single turn was probably going to matter at some point. But, Milotic finally managing to land a Hypnosis into King Gambit, get the Muddy Water KO into Sneasler, and then I think at that point, with the knockout on the King Gambit, like, Milotic was just going to be able to clean up there. Yeah, going into game 2, I mean, that Raichu actually proving to be quite a menace in this matchup. Like, that Zap Cannon just able to remove Delphox immediately. And yeah, Delphox, I think, is going to have a pretty tricky time against this entire team, but Floette is probably not going to fare much better. But I don't know. What do you think Squidero can do to make this second game go a little bit better?
Yeah, it's really tough, because if you're just looking at the matchups, like Delphox, both your main setup mons and Megas, Floette and Delphox get absolutely bodied by Sarah Ledge. So we saw the King Gambit trying to do some stuff, but if I were Scudero, it's really tough. I think you might have to go with Delphox and try to play your King Gambit as best as you can. But normally I'd say you try to go lean into your Incineroar, but the Milotic kind of counteracts that. So I think honestly this is just Michael has the matchup advantage here, but it's hard. Maybe you bring your Sinistcha to deal with this Milotic, but it's not a good matchup into the Sarah Ledge. So we're just going to see the same lead here from Michael, and actually Scudero trying to go with this Floette, so maybe opting to kill this Milotic first, and then hopefully with Incineroar and King Gambit in the back being able to deal with the Sarah Ledge later.
Yeah, I think we saw this switch up in the set that I referenced earlier from NAIC, Justin Tang versus Dalway. We saw that Justin actually pivoted to Floette at some point, just recognizing that Delphox was not getting any mileage, especially with the defense boosting of Sarah Ledge and Milotic. So you can just kind of use Floette to bully through both of these Pokemon here. But no, the Zap Cannon actually just picks up a KO
Wow.
onto the Raichu. But yeah, Floette only goes so far as to, it can only target the Dazzling Gleam, not going to be very strong here. Actually misses the KO on the Raichu and only does a good amount of chip damage to Milotic. The good news is that if it gets hit by Zap Cannon, it can't be paralyzed because it's already asleep. But I think Squidera is going to be, fighting sleep turns yet again. And now with both Pokemon asleep, this just allows Michael to just keep threatening more damage or just even more setup if he wants.
Yeah, Raichu also threatens Focus Blast, but Michael not trying to risk that and just trying to go with the Muddy Water, although now I'm think of it. it has no guard, so Focus Blast is guaranteed to hit. So I guess just identifying that Floette is the biggest threat here. That probably indicates also, as we most likely expect, a Sarlach in the back being able to deal with King Gambit, especially because of that Barry it's carrying. But that Gambit waking up, Raichu dying to the Sucker Punch, and Floette waking up as well, draining Kiss, getting a lot of HP back here. And let's see what it goes for, just another Hypnosis, getting this poor Floette back to sleep. And here is, as we expected, the Sarlach into the field.
Yeah, the spamming of hypnosis here means that, Michael's not really getting a lot like progress damage wise, but the spreading of hypnosis is just so annoying to deal with for Squidaro because like, every turn that you spend to sleep, you're not dealing with Milotic as it's just going to keep recovering with leftovers and Saralege opting to just go on the offensive there because I think Michael recognized that the win con here is that if you get rid of Floette, then both of these Pokemon that are able to just boost their defenses are just going to just be able to sit on the field and just do whatever they want for the rest of the game. So probably have to keep that in mind here. I'm curious as to what Squidaro's last Pokemon is in the back, but I guess we won't find out until the end of this turn. As yeah, with the chip damage, with the big hit from Bitterblade there into the King Gambit, both Pokemon staying asleep. Muddy Water just cleans up the game, and with a 1v3 scenario, Squidaro realizes it's time to throw in the towel, and that's going to be a pretty clean 2-0 for Michael Derbesti there.
Yeah, Michael being up X1, so I think one more win guarantees him a top cut spot. I'm not too sure about it, but yeah, a really clean game from Michael here, just identifying his win cons, because as we saw, the matchup is really in his favor with the Saralege, and he executed it basically perfectly, and it achieved a clean win for him, so very close to top cut, as we might expect from some player with Michael's caliber.
Yeah, this team just feels like honestly it was engineered to deal with these Floette Delphox teams. Like Saralege is such a pain for both of these megas to break through because Saralege being a fire type doesn't really mind too much if an unboosted Floette is attacking into it, and then Delphox like after a couple or after a couple bulk ups like Psyshock's doing nothing, you absorb the heat waves with Flash Fire. It's just such a tough matchup, and if you get fortunate with getting even just one boost on Milotic and just has the ability to start spamming Hypnosis, and it just enables either setup or, it just doesn't enable the team to do much in terms of progress. So, yeah, kind of an uphill battle. I think Michael played that very, very well. Squidaro sitting at 8-2 now, still in a good position to potentially make top cut if they win their last two rounds. But yeah, running into a very, very tough matchup there against a very good player. So definitely very well played to both sides, but it's tough. It's definitely very tough.
Yeah, they tried their best, but in the end, it was not enough for this round. But as you just said, it's not the end of the world. You were X1, you performed really well before, so you're able to take this loss, and it's still your own hands. Where if you win the next two rounds, there's a really good chance you still cut. So no big panic yet, but it's always unfortunately to get a loss because everyone wants to win everything, but that's unfortunately not going to be the case here. It's kind of funny how he said before that we're going to expect a slow match here, but I think this match went a lot faster than the other one because the matchup diff was just there.
Yeah, I honestly wasn't thinking too much about the Raichu in the game because I was like, okay, Raichu is like probably here just as like a second fake out option. Maybe I don't know, Lightning Rod is probably important to protect Milotic in some matchups, but it actually played a pretty huge deal in just like dishing out status, and it's just like another method of disruption for the team, which I think is really interesting because like Zap Cannon, it not only does a lot of damage, but also it's a method of speed control and also just like general disruption because like if you get full para, that's like the same thing as getting a sleep turn basically. So you have another means of setting up your other Pokemon. So yeah, I mean Raichu like just proving that it's like a mega that can function outside of just wanting to do damage or fake out. It's just like a method of speed control in and of itself. So that was a really cool game plan I think from Michael's side, and I think it demonstrates Raichu, the kind of the role that it can play on certain teams.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think if I'm right, we're gonna head into our second match here, which would be Jude versus Tio Time. So two incredible players as well. Jude from Singapore, and Tio Time, also known to some people as Didi from France. Really good IRL result this season. So we're just gonna head into the replays that we've seen. So if we're looking at the teams real quick from El Nino here, is Jude. Let me look at their open team sheet real quick. So we're gonna have another setup team here with Floette, but this time opting for just Floette as the only Mega here, so really relying on it, so no secondary Delphox mode, and just opting for a more, I'd say, balance is and less relying on your setup with the Garchomp here on the team. Which honestly, as we're actually wow, it's a Mega Garchomp on this side. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I didn't even notice the Mega Garchomp here.
Yeah.
That's very interesting, actually. I wonder what the purpose of the secondary Mega Garchomp is. I don't know. Maybe it's just a another matchup dependent Pokemon to pick here. But yeah, we sort of seeing a dueling philosophies here. We have the traditional sort of Delphox Floette approach, that very similar to a team that we saw last in our last game. But then we also have a team that's more focused on just getting the Floette set up as much as possible. So we'll have to see how these teams, these sort of similar ideas of teams, kind of clash. As Delphox, Sneasler are going to be the leads from Teotime's side, as Delphox just goes for the Protect to eat the Fake out here, as Sneasler going to fire off the Close Combat. This is Choppleberry King Gambit and also -1, so King Gambit going to take that a lot more comfortably. But yeah, going to eat 2 attacks into the Protect there, so Teotime just content getting some damage off here as Protect comes out. Teotime reading this potentially passive turn from Magic Aura's side, as they just opt for a nasty plot here, as Incin is just going to get a parting shut off, but this means Delphox will be boosting its attack at least a little bit. And we're just going to see some more pivoting games coming out here with the Incin coming back in, as Mega
Yeah, I
Garchomp
think
makes an
this is.
appearance.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a matchup where we're going to see a lot more pivoting, and I'm really curious to see how this Garchomp is going to do. I wouldn't be surprised if this kills, because this Garchomp's attack stat is like so high, and we're just actually, never mind, I'm completely off, but it's still doing a lot of damage here. So I'm assuming this, if you're Diddy here, you're going for Protect, just maybe try to get some damage off, and then probably try to get your Sinistcha in to get some healing back, or potentially an Incineroar to damage his Garchomp a bit, because I think what's special about this Garchomp from Jude's side is that it's Mega and physical, where normally the only Mega Chomps I've seen so far have been specially orientated.
Yeah, I think the key here for Teo Team is going to be trying to get some recovery on this Delphox, because now it's in range of basically any attack from either the Incineroar or the Garchomp. But the Incineroar, interestingly, does not have a Dark type move here, so will not be threatening a KO on Delphox this turn. But still going to be kind of a little bit of a tricky dance around these powerful physical attackers here. And Delphox just trying to get as many boosts as possible to try and just power through the Garchomp's defenses, because Garchomp is a relatively bulky Pokemon, and especially if it gets the coaching up, which is actually going to be a huge deal, because Psyshock, once again, hits on the defensive side. So if it's able to boost its defenses here, Psyshock's going to be doing a lot less damage. But nope, just opting for a Heat Wave, not going to be even close to picking up a knockout on this Garchomp, and Garchomp back to neutral stage of attack, able to pick up the knockout on Delphox. So with Tia Team's main sweepers out of the way, we'll have to see. Oh yeah, there's the Incineroar in the back. So I mean, honestly, I think Tia Team just kind of ran out of gas here in the end game, just kind of down here to Incin and Sinistcha. Maybe a way back because of how chipped everything is, because there is no recovery on Magic Aura's side here. So maybe with a little bit of help from Rock Slide, a little bit of a little bit just sitting on the field here. Garchomp's Earthquake still very, very powerful. Deals almost a knockout into the Incineroar. Uh, yeah, and I'm starting to doubt Sinistcha's ability to pull this back as each turn goes
Yeah,
by.
yeah, especially with that flinch. I think something that Teotime might have tried to do differently here is, I'm wondering, is even with the +1, you're still like +4 on your own Delphox's Psyshock maybe would have been able to kill it. But honestly, still pretty close. Like the Garchomp hanging on with 1 HP, dying now to the Matcha Gacha, but I just think that Sneasler together with King Gambit is just enough for Chu to take this game 1 here.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting, honestly, Mega Garchomp to be the key player that it was in this matchup. But honestly, it makes a lot of sense. Like if you're anticipating to face down Delphox, like Garchomp is probably the Mega that you want to go with, because like even at -1, like even being able to almost completely just knock out Incineroar right off the bat, and I think Garchomp, a more bulky Garchomp that can just kind of sit there and take advantage of coaching, is a very interesting sort of secondary mode to this team that I think a lot of players haven't considered yet. Like I think a lot of these teams kind of just focus on the 2 special attackers wanting to set up, and then they don't realize that, oh, maybe a secondary mega with like maybe on the physical side can help sort of balance out the matchups a little bit. So I think people have been kind of experimenting with Staraptor in that regard, but Garchomp is a very, very interesting choice here because you just have like Sneasler does have access to coaching, so you can support a secondary Mega Evolution option. But going into game two, Delphox, Incineroar, this time would be led into the King Gambit and Sneasler. Yet another coaching option for the Sneasler if it wants to potentially go for that. Delphox just going to protect as Sinistcha comes in, takes the fake out, and Sucker Punch going to go into nothing there.
Yeah, we're just going to see probably, as I expected, a pivot into Incineroar. Now this King Gambit is probably just going to try to get a Kowtow Cleave off. But I'm actually seeing, wow, a straight KO. So no support anymore for this Delphox to get it taken away with a Rage Powder Board. Oh, no protect from this King Gambit. I'm not too sure if this King Gambit has protect or not, but it's just straight up dead now. So all this effort from the early game, trying to get it into a position where the redirection is dead, just for it to go down. So it's now in the hands to Garchomp to deal the rest of the damage and get rid of this Delphox.
Yeah, the King Gambit feeling safe at least on the first turn to go for an attack because the unboosted Heat Wave usually not able to pick up the knockouts on the King Gambits. But the second turn maybe playing a little bit more aggressively, but unfortunately just pays the price there with it going down. But Sinistcha is a big KO to get this early in the game because this Delphox already so low here, but yeah, 2 Psyshocks into that unboosted Garchomp, able to just clean up the entire team. And Delphox having a much better time that game. We see a much quicker game too, as Delphox finally able to find its position there. And yeah, able to get through Garchomp there as it's not able to be boosted. And we're going to a game 3.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference here was the turn 3. I think decided the game where Jude opted not to protect and potentially trying to read something that the Delphox is either not attacking the King Gambit or going for a nasty plot, but a fake out Heat Wave just straight up killed it and allowed Delphox to sweep the entire team. So I'm interested to see how he's gonna handle this game 3. Is he gonna go for the same game? For the same game plan? I'm thinking, okay, maybe if I just played a little bit safer, I can still win. And we're just gonna see I don't know if this is the same leads anymore, but we're just gonna see probably the same turn from Diddy here, switching the Incineroar out into the Sinistcha and going for the Protect. So I'm gonna see if this time around is gonna be different, and it is gonna be different. King Gambit is gonna switch out into the Garchomp, just trying to launch a Heat Wave here. Is there gonna be any burn? No burn, but here's the Garchomp starting to set it up with the +1 defense, really being able to deal with the Delphix well, because once again of the Psyshock hitting the defensive side of the Garchomp and not the specialty side. We're gonna see the instant switching in, and a miss on the Garchomp here, so this Delphox not doing anything this turn, and a big Rock Slide doing a lot of damage here, so a really good turn for Jude here.
Yeah, we saw even in the first game that like Garchomp doesn't need the attack boost to be a threat. It can just start immediately throwing off damage with these powerful Rock Slides. It can catch the switch-ins from the Incineroar. It can just do a lot of damage to Delphox, and it just kind of forces, like, if Delphox has to take a hit here, it just forces TO Team so much on the back foot, just trying to protect the Delphox, do the more positioning game. Meanwhile, if Garchomp just gets that one boost, it's just able to, keep the opposing player pressured. And yeah, like with that +1 defense boost, it makes it so much more resilient to Delphox on both ends of the spectrum. And now it just allows you to rotate in and out your fake outs. But we saw, yeah, was that a double protect? I think that was a double protect on the Delphox. So
Yeah,
yeah, recognizing that it's going to need a few more turns of recovery here to be out of safely Garchomp KO range from Rock Slide. But unfortunately, the Heat Wave not going to quite be enough, and the Incineroar going down so early just being a huge detriment. And the flinch as the icing on top means that Garchomp is in a fantastic position to just close this game out. Just rotate back in your fake outs. Sneasler close combat picks up the opposing Sneasler, but if you're able to just switch in the Incineroar here, Garchomp probably just able to clean up the rest of the game here. So yeah, it looks like this game might just be going to
oh,
Magic Aura. Yeah, the
Quick Guard,
Sneasler
I
does
didn't
have
even
Quick
realize
Guard.
that.
Yeah, the Sneasler does have Quick Guard. This is a innovation that's been on a few of these kinds of teams. It just, it's really good in the mirror because you're able to stop the fake out cycling and just kind of threaten that mind game on turn 1. But Garchomp is going to go down here. So, you have to dedicate so many resources to getting rid of this Garchomp. And this Sinistcha actually is carrying Akaberry, which could have been pretty helpful in this matchup because this Incineroar doesn't have the dark coverage to deal with it. But King Gambit able to eat this close combat with the Choppleberry means that it's going to be able to survive the turn, which allows Incineroar to pick up the knockout on Sinistcha and King Gambit to pick up the knockout on Sneasler, and Magic Aura going on to win this set and move on to 9-1.
Yeah, really well played from both ends here. I think Diddy in this game identified, okay, I'm not in a great position, so I'm not gonna kill the Garchomp with a Psyshock, so I might basically just be better off trying to spam Heat Wave, deal a little bit of damage, and hopefully get a burn, which would have turned this game around for the Delphox to live another Rock Slide. And then in the end, we saw Sneasler. The only way out here is like identifying, okay, it is Choppleberry, so I'm not gonna kill unless I crit. But unfortunately for Diddy, that was not what ended up happening. So we're gonna see Ju taking it and moving on to 9-1. But with that, I think, yeah, that's it for us for this round. Thank you for watching, and next round you'll be up with some new casters. Um, if I'm right, it's Slim together with Tyson, so we'll be back shortly.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Smogon VGC Major. We are back with another round with me, Eric, and Sven joining me once again. We are in round 11, a make or break round for both of these players. This is pretty much a win and in here. We're going to have some very talented players on stream. We're going to have CK49, also known as Audi, going up against RP Joka. Looking up at the teams here, RP Joka, running basically pretty standard team as we were just discussing earlier. The standard Charizard, Tailwind with the supporting cast, Basque Legion, with a new addition of Life Orb, Garchomp, Eternal Flower, Floette, and just some mainstays of the Regulation MA metagame being updated for the current regulation. Just some new items. And some pretty familiar sets all around. This is a team that we saw all over the place in Regulation MA. No surprise to see it at the top tables at this tournament. And it's going to be going up against a pretty interesting matchup here, going into Audi's team with the new take on Charizard, Venusaur. We saw this combination win a regional earlier in the year in Regulation MA. But now with a bit of a different supporting cast here, we have the Mega Metagross and the Sylveon. So what are we thinking about these two teams?
Yeah, I think from that Crow side, we're just seeing if we talk about Big Six, that's the team you talk about with those exact sets. Maybe the King Gambit set can be changed, like the item, but that's basically it. And from Audi side, we're seeing a more innovative team where you're keeping the Gore from I believe, the Indianapolis winning team, with Garchomp, Charizard, Venusaur, Incineroar, but now with Choice Scarf still actually on the Chomp, so not a Life Orb opting, and I'm really excited to see this Metagross, see how this will do, actually carrying Iron Head, Ice Punch, Rock Tomb, so probably saying, okay, if I have Sylveon, I already have enough ways to deal with Staraptor, because a lot of the times you see no Rock Tomb actually, I think mostly you see Psychic Fangs instead of that slot. So really curious to see how that's going to end up. I think for this matchup it might be beneficial, although I'm not too certain how good Metagross will be into the Big Six, but I think that's what we're about to see when we're heading into the match.
Yeah, I think Metagross is an interesting Pokemon here. I don't know if it's going to come into the matchup like you were saying. It does kind of struggle a little bit into stuff like King Gambit, Basque Legion, Charizard. I mean, the Rock Tomb does help, but potentially just going to be a Charizard mirror match here, as we're going to see Garchomp and Sylveon from Adi's side going against the Whimsicott and Charizard from Crow's side here. So this is a pretty good lead, I would say, for Audi. You have some offense immediately, and it kind of forces Crow to be in a position where, okay, do they want to just go straight on the offensive with Moonblast here, try to get rid of that Garchomp immediately, or if you just want to try to settle for getting a Tailwind up here. But the Yawn on the Sylveon here is an interesting move choice here. It does allow the team to play a bit more of a slower game, potentially anticipating a little bit more of a passive turn, but it's Protect coming from the Garchomp as the Tailwind comes out from Sylveon. Sylveon just going to throw off a Hyper Voice here, does a good amount of damage to Whimsicott as Adi's Charizard enters the battlefield.
Yeah, I think we're just seeing Audi making a safe player, expecting probably a Moonblast into the Garchomp slot, so switching into Charizard, but now is actually in a really good position because you threaten a kill, and as we just talked about, Jan might actually become into player by being able to Drowsy Disart, because the alternative is either you Hyper Voice, you don't deal a lot of damage, although you do cover up the switch in. So yeah, I think Jan is probably your best option here to mitigate the Charizard from dealing a lot of damage to you later in the game.
Yeah, the Charizard switch in very nice here for Audi. Audi's team not really having that speed control option, probably just relying on the bulk. And, there is Rock Tomb on Metagross as a speed control option. You have a Choice Scarf Garchomp, so you do have ways of getting the speed advantage, but maybe just accepting that you're going to be the slower team in this position, just trying to rely on some bulk. The Sylveon, unfortunately, is going to take the special attack drop there, as it is going to be able to survive the Weather Ball Moonblast double up, but the Yawn actually goes into the Whimsicott here, so not opting for any Hyper Voice damage this turn, but the Heat Wave miss on the Whimsicott there potentially being a problem here, maybe trying to account for a switch out in some capacity.
Yeah, that's actually a really, really big miss again, because the targeting makes sense, because the Whimsicott has a chance to go down, so it covers the switch in, but because of this Heat Wave miss, the Whimsicott stays alive, and the Yawn goes into that slot. Well, if it hits, the Whimsicott goes down, and then, or actually no, it gets down to, no, because of the miss, it will die, and then the Yawn would go off into the Charizard slot. So a really, really big miss again. So in the first 3 rounds so far, we're seeing 2 sets where Charizard is just saying, I don't want to hit my moves all the time.
Yeah, it's kind of the risk you have to play with Charizard. Like the returns of hitting your moves is so high, but like when you miss, it does throw off the position a little bit. And Whimsicott being safe for later actually potentially going to be huge in this matchup. Does allow you to get a secondary Tailwind off in the future if you want. But this Garchomp going to come in here is going to have to take the Intimidate from Incineroar. Going to have to take a little bit of damage for its trouble here, but it finds itself in a pretty good position against these two fire types. With a chipped Charizard already, probably in Rock Slide range. But also a Life Orb Earthquake could potentially get rid of this Incineroar after the potential Fake Out turn.
Yeah, it was a really good Incineroar switching because the Garchomp is at -1 now and the Heat Wave just doing not a lot of damage, and now you pressure Fake Out as you just mentioned. So really good plays from Adi so far. Could have even been better if it wasn't for the Heat Wave miss, but definitely still a game to play here.
Yeah, so the Whimsicott is going to come back in here, potentially maybe as a sacrifice, but no, it's going to be able to stay on the field for a little bit longer. The Rock Slide comes out from Garchomp, able to pick up the knockout on that very, very weakened Sylveon, as this allows Incineroar to come back in, get another Intimidate down on that Garchomp. But now with the Tailwind expiring, Whimsicott does have the option to go for another one if it wants to, and this Garchomp here probably looking to switch out here to try and reset those Intimidate drops. So the Crow with a very early game advantage here, trying to capitalize on that now with the Sylveon being out of the picture.
Yeah, being able to get a second Tailwind up is so huge here, because otherwise Adi has this Choice Scarf on the Garchomp and will be able to outspeed both the Charizard and the opposing Garchomp, so it would not be able to do any damage anymore. But now, because of this miss, he's able to set up another Tailwind, but actually just opting for Protect this turn and Double Protect, making sense to cover for the Incineroar Fake Out while also checking what the Garchomp is seeing, what it's locking into, and it's just a Dragon Claw as expected. So we're gonna see what the next turn is gonna be. I'm assuming it's just gonna be a Tailwind from the Whimsicott's end, and I would probably guess that your Garchomp will be switching out, because if you're looking at Adi's team, Garchomp is able to hit all these monsters super effective, and you want to reset those Intimidate drops. So probably opting to switch out for either the Charizard here or the last one in the back, which has not been revealed, but it will be now by King Gambit. So another really good defensive switch by identifying that, okay, this Garchomp is Scarf, it cannot hit my Whimsicott, so I'm not doing a lot of damage while I'm switching in the King Gambit, but wow, what a switch in. Also actually getting the parting shot off, and now this King Gambit is about to click Sucker Punch and be able to kill everyone on Adi's side.
Yeah, I was going to say that the King Gambit maybe not the safest switch in here, because if Adi is expecting the King Gambit, they could have just doubled up with Dragon Claw and Flare Blitz, which would have knocked out the King Gambit. But instead going for the parting shot here, maybe not expecting the King Gambit to be the Pokemon in the back. But as you said, with all those boosts now, especially with the parting shot on top of that, it's now at +4 attack, I believe. So now, like, Sucker Punch, yeah, basically going to be able to get a knockout into that Garchomp because it has no choice but to click an attacking move. Charizard is easily in range of a Sucker Punch. And I believe this King Gambit does have access to low kick. So
Yes.
with the Tailwind, it is able to remove the Incineroar as well. So King Gambit basically has its pick of what it wants to take a knockout onto here too, but it does have to be careful with the prospect of two fire types on the board now. But Whimsicott failing the Encore, I believe, into the Garchomp switch in here. So Charizard going to come back in to reset the Sun, going to save Garchomp from a
Whoa.
potential Sucker Punch, but the Sucker Punch instead goes into the Incineroar, and with the critical hit, that is able to knock out the Incineroar even through the resist. So game one going to the Crow there. So yeah, the Big Six archetype getting yet another victory, and we'll have to see how Adi is going to adjust in the second game.
Yeah, I do think that critical hit mattered because it is a Choppleberry set and not a Black Glass set. I don't think it would have mattered for the outcome of the game, because then after the recoil, if Incineroar opts for a Flare Blitz, it's still gonna die. But still, yeah, with the crit, just securing the game on the spot. And I think if we look back at how this game went, I think Adi played a very good game. Just like the Crow, I think just the biggest difference here was the Heat Wave miss having such a big impact on the rest of the game.
Yeah, there's just so much offensive pressure coming out from the Crows side. It just really, yeah, like I think Adi played really, really well, and trying to cycle out the Incineroar and just getting those fake outs on board to try and slow things down a little bit. Obviously, falling victim to the Heat Wave miss earlier in the game, which probably could have made a huge difference in getting rid of that Whimsicott early, but provided some better RNG in this game, maybe things will go a different way. But we're seeing a complete switch up here from the Crows side, actually opting for Floette this time, as Adi is going to keep the same leads with Charizard and Sylveon.
Yeah, so switch up here, opting for the Floette, but actually I'm really curious to see how that's gonna go, because there is a lot of offensive pressure here from Audi, where if you can click Heatwave Hyper Voice, if this Floette opts for a Mega, because of the Fairy Aura, it will also be opting to boost this Sylveon, but maybe if there's a Light of Ruin, it might be able to kill the Sylveon, probably depends on how both mons are trained, but yeah, really interested to see what's gonna happen here, because Audi has so much offensive pressure that there's no real good switch in or anything you can switch in to prevent this Whimsicott or this Floette from dying if there are no protects.
Yeah, Heat Wave and Hyper Voice just being a very, very oppressive combo here. There's basically, like you said, nothing in the back that wants to switch into that. And having Sylveon against these two fairy types, especially the Mega Floette, which is going to give it the Fairy Aura boost, is probably the best situation you could have it in. But like you said, yeah, Light of Ruin, this is a modest Floette, so Light of Ruin will be doing a lot of damage to Sylveon. Probably not enough for an Oko on its own. But the problem is if you dedicate resources to getting rid of that Sylveon, then Charizard just gets a free Heat Wave off, and that means this Whimsicott and Floette will be taking a large chunk of damage. And that could even make the difference of whether or not this Floette goes down if it has to take the Light of Ruin recoil in addition to an attack from Charizard. But Charizard going to connect both of its Heat Waves this time does over half to Floette. Yeah, so if it was able to get that hit off with Light of Ruin, that could have just been the difference of it being knocked out there. But Whimsicott able to get the Tailwind up here, but it is in range notably of that Sylveon's Quick Attack if it decides to go for it this turn.
Yeah, you could argue that you might want to try to Encore the Sylveon into a Protect, but I don't know if that's your best play here overall, because if the Sylveon actually gets the double Protect, therefore your Floette will not be able to click the Light of Ruin and get a KO into it, and then it will result into it dying, so it might be better to either switch out your Whimsicott to preserve it, or to just say I'm just gonna sack both of my Monsmere and hope with two offensive mons in the back to try and sweep Adi. But yeah, a lot better start from this game now. Now that Charizard's able to hit both Heat Waves on the turn, so Adi in a much better spot than before.
Yeah, the problem is like you just have to dedicate so many options to slowing down both of these Pokemon, and obviously both of these fairy type attackers not really threatening too much into Charizard, so you kind of just have the ability to throw Heat Waves down on the board if you want to dedicate all the damage and resources into getting rid of the Sylveon. So no Encore coming out here, so the Quick Attack is able to get rid of the Whimsicott, and Charizard just throws off a Heat Wave here, is able to connect into the Floette, and that is another KO here. So now we have Garchomp and King Gambit, which still have the ability to do a fair amount of damage on their own here. But yeah, I mean, like with two Pokemon remaining against four, Audi might have the tools able to just reposition, stall out the Tailwind, and put themselves in a better position to end this game. But with these Pokemon being chipped, it does make the position a little bit trickier.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how that Crow is going to react to this, because there's only 2 turns of Tailwind left as well, so we're probably just going to see a double protect from Adi's end to just stall it out. Garchomp opting for a Rock Slide, and then the King Gambit opting for a low kick, so covering a potential instant switch in on the Charizard slot. So with just 1 turn of Tailwind remaining, I wouldn't be surprised if there's going to be a switch in, because your Sylveon is really, really valuable, and this Garchomp is probably not being able to get a KO onto this mon. Maybe with an Earthquake, but if there's an Earthquake, you will also hit your own Gambit if you don't protect, so there's a bit of a mind game there to be played. But I think Adi will just sack the Zard, because realistically it's not going to do that much, even though it can do great damage into the King Gambit, but Garchomp will just be able to kill it with life, or probably at -1 as well, even if you switch to the Insyn. So I'm really interested to see what actually Adi's back mons are. I'm assuming it's based on how he's played this. Definitely probably Incineroar Garchomp. I'm not definitely not expecting the Metagross here. Venusaur could be good here as well, because you always threaten Sleep Powder, which could be good here, especially if you want to preserve your Zard. But yeah, we're just gonna have to wait and see what that turn is gonna hold.
Yeah, it's still a tricky position here regardless, because you see the Crow potentially going for low kick to try and catch us Incineroar on the switch in here. The problem is here is that if you ignore one of these slots, they either of them have a potential to pick up a knockout. Like if you ignore if the Charizard's able to survive the turn, it KOs the King Gambit, but if the Sylveon's able to survive the turn, it's able to KO the Garchomp. But yeah, just being able to connect the Rock Slide there into the Kowtow Cleave into the weakened Sylveon is a double knockout there. But now we have the Choice Scarf Garchomp on the board. Unfortunately, not able to lock into something like Earthquake, because that's going to KO your own Incineroar. So potentially a scouting turn here for the Crow side, just able to get a double protect here, just to stall out the fake out turn, and also just kind of scout what the Garchomp is going for. We'll have to see what the Garchomp locks into as the fake out goes into the King Gambit, as the Dragon Claw goes into the Garchomp. So We'll see if the chip damage, it is able to get the KO on Garchomp. We'll have to see if the King Gambit is able to hold on. This Flare Blitz does a lot of damage as the low kick goes into the Incineroar, but I don't think +1 King Gambit is able to get the knockout on Garchomp with the Sucker Punch, so instead just going for the Kowtow Cleave, able to live the Rough Skin damage, and the Sucker Punch able to pick up the knockout, the double down, but the Crow is going to win this game and take the set.
Yeah, I think I'm quite surprised, honestly, by the earlier turn from Audi by not protecting the Sylveon, but the Crow in the end being able to power through with the offense against Audi's team, and I think this secures that Crow from top cut, if I'm right.
Yeah, they were 9-1 when this round started, so that win will put them at 10 wins, and that will, yeah, basically lock them for top cut.
Yeah, so congrats to that Crow for reaching the final stage of the tournament, and Audi. I don't know how the situation for Audi is. I think he needed this win because he tied before. So I'm not sure how that will work out. I don't know the math behind it, but either way, still a great result, even if he doesn't make cut. But yeah, we're just gonna see how it will unfold. I'm not too sure about that.
Yeah, really great set from both players, showing exactly just, how good this Big Six team is and how versatile it is, being able to swap between the two mega modes. And, despite kind of having a not so great lead in the beginning, able to pull it back and win this game, this second game, and clean up the set. So congratulations to Joka for making it to top cut, and a very, very well played set. That is going to be it for our time as casters. Thank you guys so much for having us on. We're going to be swapping you guys over to a new set of casters to take you guys into the last round of Swiss and the initial rounds of Top Cut. So don't go anywhere. We got more VGC action coming up, and stay tuned for the last round of Swiss and Top Cut to come.
Welcome back, Smogon. I am Tyson, joined here by Slim for round number 12 of the Smogon VGC Live. I'm super excited to get into our last round of Swiss here, wrapping up a long weekend of Pokemon. Slim, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm looking forward to this match, and of course, this will definitely set up the last. This, like you said, it's the last round of Swiss. We're going to be getting into Top Cut after this, and so interesting to see what made it to the next phase. And of course, here's our first matchup: Carson with the Lycanroc Dusk, which we've kind of seen here and there. So, Sprinkle, what do you feel about this Pokemon?
I'm really excited, honestly, to get to see some of these Pokemon. We got to see a lot of creative picks throughout Regulation MA. We talked about it yesterday in the morning with Lorsey. Things like Lycanroc really stick out to me, though, in Regulation MA and going into Regulation MB now of having that staying power just because of how many things that were good in Reg MA continue to be good in Reg MB. Again, that Lycanroc, right, making really a big splash, being able to hit Charizard and King Gambit for super effective damage, as well as in that priority with that Accelerock, doing tons of damage with that Tough Claws ability as well. Something that the team really has done well at adapting is originally they had something like the Aerodactyl, the Mega Aerodactyl to pair with the Scovillain, but not being able to hit King Gambit was a real big problem for the team, and relying on just Overheat with your Scovillain really wasn't the best thing. So Lycanroc adapting to that rock type slot, being able to go for those rock type moves into the Charizard and then still have the close combat for something like the King Gambit, honestly has given this team a lot of staying power. But I mean, what are your thoughts on this team? I feel like I've seen it everywhere now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think you touched on it, which was the biggest thing. They really had a tough time not being. I mean, Aerodactyl, fantastic Pokemon, but just unfortunately, just being stuck there and just having to maybe go for Rock Slide flinches was just never fun because you just needed a surefire way to get it off the field. As you switch to the other side, which A&B is running this team that's kind of been the splash of the tournament, the splash of the format, and Mega Swampert really showing like, hey, even though we already had a rain mode, I can add something that our Trulodon can't, which is those huge earthquakes and physical damage here. And of course, everybody's favorite Pokemon, Grimmsnarl, is back, showing, hey, all I need is Light Clay, I got your screens, and Parting Shot has been fantastic. And Spirit Break has always been a great source of damage and fairy type stat.
Yeah, it's really funny because people have kind of complained about running Thunderwave on Grimmsnarl, and they're like, oh yeah, people, they finally got rid of it, and it's gone now. But honestly, I think Grimmsnarl getting Parting Shot, it really didn't get to see a lot of play in Scarlet and Violet, for example, because of items like Clear Amulet, and in Sword and Shield, the Pokemon just didn't get it. But considering now we're in a format where you have limited items, there's no Clear Amulet, there's really only White Herb, something like Parting Shot gives you so much immediate value, as well as a format where weather and mega weather particularly kind of reigns supreme. So being able, just with how the speed interactions work and things like that, being able to prankster Parting Shot out into your Pelipper and get that rain pretty much guaranteed is really good. And it's not going to come up in this matchup, but in like the Sun matchup and things like that, it's really going to come down to when those turns pop up. But in this matchup particularly, I really want to see the Swampert kind of go to town. I think Scovillain, yeah, will be able to get a burn. It is running the Giga Drain over something like the Leech Seed, so you do threaten the Swampert a little bit more, especially with that bold nature. Maybe you're able to eat a Wave Crash through something like the Aurora Veil as well. And heal back with the Giga Drain. But let's get right into the action of round 12 here. Game number 1 of Clippers versus Carson.
Yeah. Looking forward to see what the leads are going to be. I mean, like you said, the Scovilla is actually, like, I think really great in this matchup just because it can kind of sit here and you have to give it a lot of attention. And of course, Frostlass being able to spam those blizzards is something you do have to worry about. And I was thinking like, oh, Mega Floette is kind of great, but it's also kind of, it's always going to usually go potentially like second. You still can get off a lot of damage, and of course having the Sinister being able to come in, Rage Powder, and then of course give some healing back could play a huge part in this matchup. So I'm waiting to see what these leads are. I don't think immediate range starts out, but I wouldn't be surprised if something like Swampert is in the lead here.
Yeah, the only issue I have with Sinister, I think, in this matchup is 4 of the Pokemon on Carson's side hit it for super effective damage. So if that healing is worth it, we can see it. But the leads here, Swampert and Pelipper for Clippers, and Carson with the Scovillain and the Sneasler.
Yeah, super offensive lead here and just putting on a lot of pressure just immediately with the Pelipper going for potential hurricanes here. But Swampert doesn't really like to see Scovillain just right here. And then, of course, fake out is very prevalent. So Carson probably going to have to think about, okay, what's my cost benefit here? If I go for fake out, then what happens? Swampert's immediately threatened. So I think Clippers has to make an adjustment here. So the ball's kind of in your court of how you want to reposition yourself and just trying to read what Clippers wants to go for here.
Yeah, and I really like this lead, opting to lead for the Pelipper, knowing that you don't have to play the parting shot games if there's no priority weather on the opposing side. Carson, though, going for just fake out and Giga Drain into the Pelipper, also trying to fish for a Moody Boost in the face of the Swampert, recognizing that it most likely will protect against the threat of fake out 4 times super effective Giga Drain.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, that's a pretty fair turn. I mean, Clippers, you're always going to just protect your Swampert. There's no really need to reposition just yet. But Pelipper, right in that range where it's like 52%. Okay. And if you're Carson, if you're like, if I can somehow find a way to get rid of this Pelipper, then it immediately puts me in a great position where I don't have to worry about hurricanes and I don't have to worry about weather coming in for the rest of the game, even though there's no weather switch. But we do see the Sinister switch opting to heal the Pelipper here, and Carson goes for a nice protect here. But oh, absolute Clippers reads that and goes immediately for the threat into the Swampert, which was the Scovillain, and a fabulous turn as we see Frost take the field.
Yeah, and that was a really unfortunate turn for Carson there. We saw in that turn one that Moody Boost dropping the speed of the Scovillain, allowing Pelipper with these Citrus Berry variants usually have no speed. So allowing Pelipper to outspeed the Scovillain in that instance. It was a kind of a weird turn as well, but the Archaludon goes in for the Pelipper to protect from Sinistra, trying to play around the Frost Last there, but Carson holding on to that weather and going for the Shadow Ball and getting the special defense drop into the Archaludon as well. So on this turn now, a Mega Evolution Blizzard from this Frostlass on Carson's side is going to do a lot of damage regardless of what comes in. There is not a single resist on Clipper side that can come in here to take this Blizzard.
Absolutely. We do see the Rage Spreader come in. Here's the big Blizzard almost picking a double KO, but just barely missing out. We do see a Gunk Shot, unfortunately, does miss the Sinistra. But luckily, your Frost Slash, you do get a special defense slash, but you do live. So you get another turn to potentially spam a Blizzard here. Or if you think something's coming in, you can get off for Shadow Ball. And Sneasler right here in an amazing spot. Hasn't been touched yet. Just been kind of spamming Gunk Shots. And of course, we'll always have an opportunity to potential go for those close combat. So honestly, if you're Carson, you're in a pretty good spot to continue to win these damage trades.
Yeah, I think what I want to see from Clippers on this turn is maybe bringing in something like the Pelipper, regaining that weather control, and potentially, dropping it on purpose to 2 of Carson's attacks, something like a Blizzard and a double up. But we are just going to see a swap of the King Gambit, recognizing that Pelipper could come in on the slot. Gunk Shot going to take out Sinistra. No more healing for Clippers. Archaludon here is going to be stuck at that 28% and slowly healing up with the leftovers. I'd say a pretty neutral turn. The Swampert does come in here and is threatening Earthquake against both these Pokemon, and you are able to bring in Pelipper, but I think Carson doing a great job at recognizing that the Pelipper's still in the back for Clippers, and as long as you manage the weather as well and deny the Swampert that Swift Swim, your Pokemon are in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for Clippers, this potentially just is just an easy, like, hey, I need to switch out and get the rain up and go for an Earthquake. And I mean, you could have to potentially eat a Sucker Punch here. King Gambit might live, so you might go for Kowtow here, but honestly, the Mega Swampert, of course, Scovillain's not in the back, so you're in a pretty decent spot here. And Pelipper switching in, of course, is the obvious play to go here. So will we see the Earthquake, and how much damage was it, though? Ooh, okay. Doing a good amount of damage, of course, not able to pick up. Kowtow Cleave goes into the Swampert. It does a ton, over half. Now you're potentially in a bad spot just because would Sucker Punch pick up from this range? You're not sure, but you could also switch in your potential Frost Blast here. So a multitude of options for Carson. What do you think is the move for Clippers here?
Yeah, I think for Clippers here, it's a bit of a harder choice. So the Protect on Swampert is kind of telegraphed, but you really need to get Pelipper out so that when the Frostless comes in, you can regain that weather control. But the problem is that one of these slots is getting doubled. If Clippers is able to get this turn correctly, this could be a huge momentum swing in their favor. Sucker Punch, I do believe, will get there on Swampert or will get very close. Frostlass does come in though for the Sneasler, reset the fake out, protect on the Swampert. Kingambit fails the Sucker Punch and a tailwind from Pelipper. A really smart play, not having to sacrifice either Pokemon there and getting the turn correct, right? If you stay in there on the Kowtow Cleave and the Gunk Shot goes into that Pelipper, that could just be game over there. But Clippers correctly identifying that the Swampert threatens a lot of damage, and who needs Swift so when you have Tailwind, right? It's the same speed modifier, so being able to now outspeed both of these Pokemon puts Clippers back in the game for sure. And in this range as well, I think Pelipper, as long as you land a Hurricane, can hit the Frostlass. I don't think Weather Ball is going to pick up from this range, but I think if you're able to get rid of those Frostlass, the game is kind of yours.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't. It's going to be a little bit of a gamble in Carson's end for their Sucker Punch picks up. And it does. That was the huge thing I was worried about. Blizzard does come out, actually hits. And honestly, you really lose nothing because you do get rid of the Frostlass here. But the problem is Sneasler comes in. Archulodon's really, really low. I think everything's almost in Sucker Punch range. I think Kingambit Sneasler might be able to end this out because of the Sucker Punch from Kingambit onto that Swampert.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're not getting that turn correct there. Chaladon maybe could have come in. You know that it really has a hard time against dealing with the Sneasler on the opposing end. There is no protect on this Pelipper as well, so something like a fake out Kowtow Cleave in that slot is relatively safe. You could use that information to your advantage and go for an attack maybe into the Kingambit as we see here, but no, Sucker Punch right and just into the Archaludon, calling that out as well, not giving it any room to play, and Sucker Punch as well, taking 3 KOs this game, and Carson going to win game number 1.
Yeah, and this is why Kingambit is Kingambit. This is what everybody runs it for, because if you just get things in range, Sucker Punch can close out games. Kowtow, amazing damage, and honestly, it's really hard to deal with. Being able to eat the Earthquake and then not being threatened the rest of the that game really kind of put Clippers in a really tough spot. Got the Swampert in where you wanted to be, but you were just in range, and everything else just really got chipped away. Frostlass doing an amazing job there, and really playing these Carson playing Sneasler really amazingly well. Never got in a position where it was kind of like in danger to potentially get hit, because always made some great switches. So for Clippers end, what do you think the adjustment needs to be?
I think honestly the lead was great with the Swampert and the Pelipper threatening immediate damage. I think I'd like to see a bit more of an offensive approach. Don't even risk the protects and things like that. If they want to go for the fake out Giga Drain, they can, but they're going to have to lose a Pokemon in the process. You're going to have to make calls like that, I think, in a matchup like this. Or if instead of protect, you could go for a swap into something like the Archaludon. Make a more proactive game plan. I think going for protects allows Carson to reposition things like the Frostlass or get a random Moody boost on the Scoville, and that could swing the game. It could be very scary, right? If you close combat and Giga Drain the Swampert slot and your Archaludon ends up fainting, but I really think Swampert is going to be the key to this matchup, so preserving it is more important. Archaludon, I think, in this matchup, if it gets a Flash Cannon off into the Frostlass, is nice, but it's at threat to a lot of the Pokemon on Carson's side. But we are just going to see the same lead from Clippers, but a switch up from Carson and Frostlass and the Scoville, and a 50-50 on which Mega wants to come out. But most likely that Frostlass just for the immediate weather control as well as the defense boost, which is pretty good here.
Yeah, I kind of like this offensive, just kind of like, hey, as soon as I saw you lead off with weather, I can just counter your weather immediately. And we saw Scoville immediately put on pressure and Swampert to telegraph protect as in the first game. So now I could potentially go ahead with a double up here and actually catch the Pelipper turn 1. So now you're putting a lot more pressure. You have a game to play with. So Carson just going a little bit more offensive here. And for Clippers, do you do another telegraph protect or do you hard swap? Either way, I think your Pelipper is the one in danger, and we do see that switch. Here comes our Archaludon. Will we see a protect? Yep, protect, no Mega. And we do see just an Aurora Veil and a Giga Drain. So honestly, a really great defensive turn, opting to like, hey, let me get these screens up just so I can mitigate a lot of this damage. And we do see a huge Moody boost there.
And that Moody boost is absolutely huge, because even if Pelipper comes in here to bring in that rain to make the blizzards inaccurate, Frostlass still has Shadow Ball here, and I think Shadow Ball with +2 overheat, even in the rain from base Villain, I think would be enough to pick up our Archaludon, especially with no Grimmsnarl coming in this matchup, no access to screens. think our Chaladon is getting wiped off the map if that happens. Swampert really doesn't want to stay in here now. We see the Frostlass switch. Really good control from Carson there on the weather. Electroshot going off into the King Gambit slot, doing not so much damage, but that Giga Drain, oh my goodness, doing more than 50% to that Pelipper at +2. And he got
another special attack boost. I think that's probably the story right now. These Moody boosts are going in all the right places. You do get defense drop, but honestly, in this matchup right now, that doesn't phase you at all. King Gambit having to take some damage coming in here, but honestly, you're not really too phased by it. The only thing you do have to worry about is Artillerodot is starting to get rolling just a little bit. But I mean, your Pelipper is the biggest thing here, having that weather, and you're kind of in a really bad spot. I don't think anything really wants to switch in, and this Scovillain's going to continuously do damage. You see the Mega Frostlass come in, setting up. Dragon Pulse goes into that slot, does a lot, but going to heal pretty much right back up, because now Pelipper is gone, and another Moody boost to the special attack.
Yeah, and this time there, maybe Clippers forgetting that there was no speed drop on the Scovillain this time, so Pelipper no longer outspeeds it. But now you get the speed drop. But yeah, this 4x boost Scovillain behind the screens, the Aurora Veil is going to be pretty dangerous, turns out. Frostlass coming in there to cover for the Hurricane and a potential Electroshot as well into that King Gambit slot. I was a little worried, I'm not going to lie, if the Archaladon was able to get rolling with no Sneasler on the board. You got weather control, but you weren't able to have the immediately close combat pressure into both these Pokemon. But, I mean, look at that Blizzard doing 40% and freezing the Archaladon as well. Wave Crash into the Scovillain Protect as well. Frostlass is allowed to get away with this turn and do so much damage to both these Pokemon. It's now a 2-hit KO on both of these with the Blizzard. So Frostlass is going to be able to go for it again.
There's no way. Oh, Wave Crash is able to pick up, but unfortunately, because of the recoil, Mega Swampert does go down. Turn frozen once again. And this all but spells doom right here, just because you do have two of course, boosts of your defense, and you have special attack boost, but the problem is you're still frozen, and Frostlass continuously will just spam. And honestly, I'm trying to figure out what's the way. I think you have to unthaw, and then you have to pick up 2 KOs here, and it's all of a sudden starting to look really grim. And that, and that is the cherry on top, ladies and gentlemen. Another freeze. You do thaw out, and you're able to get that out. We do see a double thaw, so honestly, not the end of the world just yet, but a pretty interesting predicament. Kowtow leaves goes into, and that will end the game right there, because now Sneasler comes in, Sucker Punch range, Kowtow, Dire Claw, and ladies and gentlemen, Carson with the win. Clippers, an unfortunate streak of bad luck in this game too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even if you get unfrozen one turn before, you're maybe able to get another attack off, and that King Gambit isn't nearly as much of a problem. We even saw the critical hit Matcha Gotcha do about 20% to that King Gambit, a sizable chunk in combination with something like a Dragon Pulse from that +1 Archaladon. I think would have been able to pick up that King Gambit maybe, or at least gotten it close. Maybe you would have needed a burn on the Matcha Gotcha as well, but it definitely would have been more playable compared to getting frozen on your Chaladon, right?
Absolutely. And shout out to Carson for a really well played game, understanding like, hey, I know what these weather wars are kind of like. I just need to put myself in certain positions where I can get King Gambit to clean up. And of course, having a lot of moments where Frostlass came in at the perfect time to just spam a lot of free damage there. Clippers went with the offensive mode, but in this game, really, the Scovillain, you weren't able to get it off the field in time. It was kind of being a menace with those special attack boosts. So either way, fantastic matchup between two great competitors, and it was a pleasure to cast.
Of course, and we'll be right back with more VGC action in just a little bit. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned for more.
Hey, Pokemon fans, welcome back. My name is Slim. I'm here with Tyson. And right before we get into our top cut, since that was the last round of Switch we just casted, wanted to give you guys a brief overview of what we're looking at bracket wise. So, as you can see on the screen, we have everybody kind of sorted and paired. So, Tyson, what do you think of the bracket so far? Any interesting names you're sticking out to you?
I think a lot of the people in this bracket are strong players for sure. It's very, I feel like it could be anyone's game, especially in these Smogon tours as well.
Yeah.
It literally it could be anyone's game.
Very, very true. And of course, we did see the last round. Carson was able to move on and see him up there at the top. VGC Brain does get a bye. So, of course, this next round we're going to do is our top 16. So, we're going to pull from any one of these matches. And like I said, it's kind of anyone's game. And we've seen a lot of what the main staples are when it comes to Pokemon-wise. So, kind of looking forward to see if we see any kind of anything new, any like different nuances. Like we've seen Raichus, we've seen Swampers, we've seen Archulodons, we've seen not as many Charizards. They have been, but not as many, of course, because with the new prevalent Pokemon, Charizard's kind of taking a dip. It's a little bit more difficult to put in great positions. Is there any Pokemon you're looking forward to see? Maybe if it can sneak in here into the top cut.
I want to see that Raichu. I mean, we talked a little bit before as well, before the cut. I really think Raichu has some staying power, but the two teams we're going to have featured for you guys are not going to be featuring Raichu. However, it's going to be, funny enough, the Charizard that you mentioned taking a little bit of a dip, are going to be playing essentially the mirror, which is going to be very exciting. Or not essentially, they are going to be playing the mirror, which is going to be very interesting. And I actually think, I always say this when mirrors come up, is I think it's a very skillful maneuver, being able to have a better understanding of your team, that you can play the mirror in a way that doesn't come down to ties. Of course, they will come up from time to time, but I think if you fundamentally have a better understanding of the team, you'll be able to play around the mirror in ways that your opponent maybe wouldn't recognize, that might be safe or strong into your own team.
Yeah, absolutely. And even though it is a mirror, there are some different nuances you can see here. For the Basculegion, for one, for Pontus is the actual Life Orb variant, while on the other side, it's going to be the Mystic Water. So opting for overall a little bit more damage heavy just in case of Intimidates. And the interesting thing is, of course, the King Gambits, one is Black Glasses, the other one is Akaberry. So one, of course, a little bit more defensive, while the other one's a little bit more offensive. So you can see the slight nuances in how they are meant to be played in this matchup. So I'm looking forward to see how each one kind of comes up, especially with having an Akaberry King Gambit where you have to deal with a Charizard mode potentially if you do want to bring it. Will you kind of bring it in this matchup? Highly doubt it, because there's also a Garchomp, there is an Eternal Floette, so it does make things a little bit more difficult. And one thing I've noticed about both is none of them are opting for the Swords Dance, which we've seen a lot of, and instead they're opting for the Iron Head because they do want to have a more guaranteed way to hit a lot of these fairy types.
Yeah, a way to guarantee hit the fairy types as well, and not really a way to get the Swords Dance set up as well, is kind of the main reason you want the Iron Head or even low kick on some of these teams as well. Not being able to have even one fake outer like the Incineroar or the Sneasler, it's kind of hard to justify running Swords Dance. It creates kind of more of a call for your King Gambit. If like you get the turn miraculously correctly, yeah, sure, you win the game. But the immediate damage of Black Glasses still is there in Kowtow Cleave and Sucker Punch. You're able to break a lot of calcs, especially on something like the Basculegion, right? Being able to Sucker Punch them and usually get them out unless they're behind screens, of course, or just like giga bulky to eat the attack. That's an option as well. You do have things like the Floette on both sides, as you mentioned as well, to kind of break through some of these Pokemon, especially the timid nature as well. Being able to, at least at the very minimum, speed tie the Garchomp, depending on how these Pokemon are trained. And with the Life Orb on Garchomp, on Blazer's side, you're able to threaten the Charizard a lot more as well. So like as you mentioned, right, the Charizard is going to be fairly difficult to bring to this matchup.
Absolutely. As we do get into right now, quintessentially our team preview. So lead wise in the mirror, what's normally what you go for? I think it's easily, I think both teams do bring Whimsicott here in the lead. Now the question is, what do you bring with it? Is it the Garchomp, or do you save your Charizard in the back? What would be your thought process going into a mirror like this?
So normally I would actually think Garchomp Whimsicott is probably the safest lead, but both of these Garchomp don't have poison jabs, so you're not able to really threaten the opposing Whimsicott as much, and you end up taking a lot of damage when you need that speed, especially to outspeed something like the Floette maybe potentially, or play the speed tie as well as the King Gambit. Chomp is kind of the cornerstone of this team and this mirror. As we see leads here, we actually do see the Charizard from Matt Master against the Garchomp on the opposing side, which is very interesting for sure.
Yeah, kind of. I'm honestly not really surprised, just knowing that, hey, I know I can potentially put on a lot of damage here with in threatening Rock Slide, but it's also one of those interesting type of leads where what if they just go for the Moonblast? And we do see a Moonblast trade of Whimsicott to another, and Moonblast going right into the Garchomp. But of course, with that Roselia Berry, Rock Slide does miss the Whimsicott, so a little bit of critical damage here. But you're able to save your Charizard and only take a minimal amount of damage from the Rock Slide and your King Gambit. But the biggest issue is now your Whimsicott, potentially if you're Matt Master, you have to either get up the Tailwind right now, or you have to try to see if you can win the speed tie with the Moonblast. But it's a questionable call just because you can't lose your Tailwind this early.
Yeah, absolutely. Ironhead threatened into that slot. We can see now if the opposing side, if the Whimsicott can swap out, if they brought their own Charizard as well, that would be a phenomenal switch. But we don't see it. Moonblast into the Whimsicott. Special attack drop actually might end up mattering.
Ooh.
Yeah, you're not able to KO. Oh, but the Whimsicott gets knocked out with the Earthquake on the opposing side. Ironhead doubles up into the Whimsicott. Tailwind is going to be denied from both sides.
That was pretty huge. The special attack drop definitely absolutely saved the day here. But I mean, going for Earthquake still clears the board. So both Whimsicotts, no Tailwind's gone up, just constantly trading damage here, as we do see a Garchomp from Matt Master come in, and we do see King Gambit on the other side taking a lot of damage. So you're in a pretty interesting position here. These Floettes, if I'm not mistaken, this one is timid, so that is also another big point here of how speedy it is, and you're gonna have to get off some damage. This is all now coming down to like how everybody's trained in speed wise. We do see the Floette go for the Mega here, Fairy Aura, of course, surrounding, and Rock Slide coming out, doing a ton of critical hit to the Floette, doing a big amount of damage. It is that Life Orb. Dazzling Gleam comes out, is able to pick up a double KO here. So now, unfortunately, it is Charizard versus the world, and unfortunately, that is not very favorable against the Garchomp.
Yeah, unfortunately there, I think the issue is the King Gambit took too much damage and was put in range of that Floette. As we mentioned before, the Charizard is really, really hard to bring in this matchup. You're staring down a Garchomp, even though, I guess the logic is, right, if Matt Master has the Life Orb Garchomp, and Pokies doesn't have the Life Orb and instead opts for the Roselia Berry, you can actually use your Charizard's bulk to your advantage. The problem is it still takes a lot from Oxide, obviously, and the rest of your team doesn't want to eat Floette hits either. So I think Pokey's bringing the perfect Pokemon to that matchup as well, and Matt Master kind of on the back foot just from the leads as well, having to swap out on that turn one so that your Charizard wasn't just immediately blown up by the Garchomp on the opposing side. Really put them on the back foot, and we do see the immediate adjustment here of the Floette. But luckily for folks, again, they have that Roselia Berry on the Garchomp instead of the Life Orb, so it gives it a bit more staying power against Floette. Of course, not against something like the Light of Ruin,
Yeah.
but
I think that's the biggest thing. Like you said, the Roselia Berry is great, but when you're staring down a double potential fairy move here, it kind of makes you want to just change your mind. Because, okay, sure, you'll take one, but how much? And then, of course, there is the potential double up here. I mean, Dazzling Gleam alone in Moonblast would potentially clear any board, especially when it comes to just Garchomp and Whimsicott here. So, Pokebro's kind of like in a interesting position where it's like, okay, if I'm potentially losing my Whimsicott here, is it better for me to potentially get off a Tailwind? But again, we just see another Moonblast here, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is just another big Dazzling Gleam here, as it doesn't even pick up the Whimsicott, and this is single target and Fairy Aura boosted, still taking a lot of damage, not able to live. But now, if you're Matt Master, you're in a fantastic position because you can still actually set up Tailwind here and continue to spam damage with your Floette.
yeah, and I mean, Floette's at comfortable HP as well, so even if Pokey's had something like the King Gambit in the background as well, or excuse me, in the back as well, something like Sucker Punch wouldn't even be able to pick up the KO on the Floette. it's in a very comfortable position now, as you mentioned, with that Whimsicott being able to get the Tailwind, not play any speed games, just go for damage with Pokemon in the back. Yeah, Light of Ruin in the flood. Doesn't get the KO though. Wait, and a Rock Slide into both these Pokemon. You get Tailwind and you bring the flood down to low HP, but you don't get the knockout. But you do bring it within range of the Kingambit and the Garchomp. I do think maybe this is a game if you're able to somehow stall out the Tailwind turns, maybe a double protect in there somewhere. But I think going for that Light of Ruin and not knocking out the Garchomp actually creates a very weird endgame.
Yeah, it's not the most clean endgame here, but I think you are in a fantastic position with 2 turns of Tailwind. Everything, if you can, no matter what comes in, if you can get in at least into Sucker Punch range, then I think you're pretty okay here. Oh, this is going to be a huge earthquake here and a great call. Opting like, you know what? I think you're going to switch. I'm not sure what's in the bag. I don't think you brought Charizard, so I can go ahead and go for this pretty freely. So a really, really great call. You do have 1 turn of Tailwind, so you do have the health advantage. So I do think Matt Master, as long as targeting goes kind of the way you want, you can potentially get away and take this to a game 3. But of course, you never want to, call it when it's too early, because there's still 1 more turn of Tailwind, which is probably going to be a double protect here, and you just never know how these speed interactions will go.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think this is a winnable endgame. Garchomp and Kingambit both go for the protect here. If Kingambit is able to get something like a critical hit Sucker Punch plus the Life Orb recoil, I think the Garchomp would go down, and you could play Sucker Punch mind games between the Garchomp and the Kingambit there, and kind of create a weird endgame. But yeah. I think it's very, very scary. It's hard to do, but it's not impossible.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even though you started off so hot, being able to have your Whimsicott live, you get the Tailwind up. The Light of Ruin not being able to pick up was huge, whereas like Garchomp could have been the one to go down here. We do see the Sucker Punch go in. Do see the Sucker Punch able to pick up the opposing Garchomp, so that'll all but do it. His Dragon Claw is able to finish off the Kingambit. So luckily, no shenanigans happened, nothing insane happened, as we're going to be able to get a game 3.
And I think a great adaptation, right? Realizing immediately that the Charizard was kind of dead weight, so actually having a Mega Evolution that got to click and attack, turns out it's pretty nice in the matchup.
Yeah, it's interesting because even though Charizard really was kind of like dead weight, I did think at a point there after the Whimsicott did go down, I'm like, you know what? If Charizard is in the back, this is not the worst position. But because like Garchomp is usually the issue here, I always think just for safety reasons, you always have to bring it. And of course, you don't have to worry about a potential Basket Legion on the other side. But really, really great going into this game 3 and how the adjustment was weighed. So now that you've seen the adjustment from Matt Master, what's the counter adjustment here that you can make?
I think you can also just lead your own flat Whimsicott, right? And just kind of click damage buttons. It's literally then becomes a game of, okay, what Pokemon do I want to sacrifice this turn? Or if my float's going to protect and try to survive the double Moonblast, double up, and just get the knockout that way. It's kind of a difficult turn if both players lead that, and I mean we see the Whimsicott Garchomp this time for Matt Master. Oh, and the Kingambit Whimsicott. I think this is a phenomenal switch up for Pokes. Something that covers that double fairy lead very well, and honestly isn't too bad into the Garchomp as well. It's a little more scary for Pokes because of something like the Life Orb on the Garchomp here on Matt's side. Again, doesn't have that Roselli Berry, so it's going to take a lot from this Whimsicott Moonblast. But with Life Orb, you're going to be able to threaten a lot more into this Kingambit. Something like Earthquake plus Moonblast into the Kingambit is a very real threat. And if, Pokes doesn't, or if Pokes lets that go through, it could be very dangerous. Moonblast, though, bringing Garchomp to 17%. There is their Moonblast and Earthquake as well. But the Kingambit hangs on, even against the Life Orb. Garchomp and Ironhead finishes off Matt's Whimsicott.
I am in awe that it somehow lived the Life Orb Earthquake there. I mean, everything would point to just like, there's no way, right? And Kingambit being able to live is huge. Whimsicott actually just still being able to just comfortably sit in front of us is actually amazing for Bros of Pokes, because now you have options where you can go for a potential another, just like, hey, what if I just go for a Tailwind here? What if I just go for a Moonblast? There's an infinite amount of options that we see the Mega Floette go ahead and a Mega here. We do see the Sucker Punch go into that slot, so trying to just get a little bit of damage while you can. And King Gambit goes down, and honestly, not a bad position. King Gambit comes in for Mad Master, so now you kind of have the authority on what you want to bring in here, because you still have Whimsicott to get off some more Moonblast, and of course Tailwind. So a pretty interesting position here, and Matt is, even though you do have Floette and a full health King Gambit, I don't know, it feels like slowly but surely you're getting put into a little tough uphill battle.
I really like that play because sacrificing the King Gambit there either ensures that the Floette goes for Protect and Garchomp goes for an Earthquake and knocks itself out with Life Orb Recoil, or the Garchomp swaps like we saw there, and the Floette has to take a little bit of chip. Either way, you're either getting a knockout or some chip damage onto the Floette for something like the Garchomp, which struggles without the Life Orb to get those knockouts. So something like a Moonblast and an Earthquake into this Floette would be really, really nice as well, even into the King Gambit. But I mean, we saw even with the Life Orb, it wasn't able to KO, so it's a little bit different now because you have Fairy Aura on the field, so I think it makes up for it in that regard. You have kind of a Life Orb on your Whimsicott in that way, but it's going to come very close, I think, and really comes down to how these Pokemon are trained here on that side. But Protect on the King Gambit, and just a Tailwind from the Whimsicott there on Poke's side. There is the Earthquake not knocking out Floette, and Light of Ruin doesn't KO through the Roselia Berry. It does, and that's huge, but that recoil is going to knock itself out. And now it's King Gambit versus Whimsicott, and what's the last Pokemon? Pokes Floette as well.
This just got super interesting because now you have a Garchomp that it's basically at no HP, and King Gambit versus the Double Fairy. I mean, this is a great time to have Iron Head, but the biggest problem is this is a Mega Floette we're talking about, and this is a Whimsicott. Just there's gonna be Fairy Aura everywhere. Sucker Punch is not enough. You're gonna have to eat whatever comes in hit wise, and then continue to hit back for a good amount of damage, which I don't think you can be able to. I don't know if there's enough time or enough damage you can do as a King Gambit to pick up both of these fairy types.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're going to have to rely on something like a Sucker Punch critical hit maybe into the Whimsicott to not have to eat his Moonblast, but yeah. Oh, the double up Moonblast, though, isn't able to get the KO, and that's going to be a one-hit knockout into Pokes. I'm not sure if they can win this now. It's going to be close.
Yeah, because we know Whimsicott doesn't have Dazzling Gleam. It has to single target hit something, and even the Sucker Punch here, like, enables the Garchomp to potentially get another chip off. We do have to, of course, worry about the Life Orb Recoil, but honestly, the King Gambit living the double up was probably the hugest factor because it felt like it was inevitable that it'll go down.
That Protecticott, though, I'm not sure if I like that. I think you're supposed to take advantage. Garchomp maybe can go for a the Iron Head there. You have to make a
rock
call.
Slide here.
Slide.
It does pick up because it's a Life Orb. If it wasn't for that, you'd actually been in a great position. But Matt Master able to bring it back from almost, it felt like the jaws of defeat, even because King Gambit able to live, and that's like the hugest thing. So, I mean, an amazing set, and honestly, I'm just still surprised that you were able to live that, and that really was, King Gambit was the star of the show here.
I think that endgame was really rough because, you know, Matt could just go for the Iron Head into the Whimsicott as well, but you can also hope for them to maybe go for a Sucker Punch, right? If you read in for, if you want to go for like the 100%, right? Like, right, if you can miss Rock Slide, you could go for a Sucker Punch plus like an attack as well, and maybe make the endgame a little bit differently. But giving the Garchomp to then play around the Protect next turn as well and allow the King Gambit to just get off that Iron Head kind of sealed the deal. And of course, landing the Rock Slide in the first place. But yeah, that was a masterful game from both sides, I think. And exactly what I was talking about at the beginning of the set, that just the understanding of the mirror was really showcased in that, but still having different things that can play out within this set, i.e. the King Gambits, both living on crucial HPs, 1% and 4% respectively, allowing them to win games. That's what the mirror match is really all about, how your Pokemon are trained and how you approach it.
Absolutely, and what a fantastic way to start us off into this top cut. And I mean, I could not ask for a better partner to do it with. So Tyson, I really appreciate you, and what a fun set.
Of course, and it was a pleasure as well, Slim. But that's going to be it from us here at Smogon VGC for the top 16 game. Tyson and Slim are going to be signing off now, but don't go anywhere. We'll be back with more VGC action soon. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned.
Ladies and gentlemen, Pokemon fans, welcome back to our next round of Top Cut. I am Slim. I was just here with Tyson, but joining me right now is my boy Eric. What's up, Eric? How are you?
We are back on the mic. We're feeling good. We're back in the top 8 of the VGC tour here. We got a lot of big names, a lot of names that I've covered before on the broadcast, a lot of returning faces, but I'm excited to get into some more Pokemon action here. Our first top 8 match that we're going to feature here is between Kyogre and Ions, and looking at Kyogre's team sheet is going to be the classic Sand combination, but Sand did get a new tool as of Regulation MB, and it is going to be featured in this team here. We have Houndstone, another lesser known Pokemon in the space, but it is notably another carrier of Last Respects, so it is a potential another late game sort of sweeper for the Sand combination to take advantage of. So what are we thinking of about these two teams here?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for me, Excadrill and T-Tar have always been a mainstay whenever they are together. They are the dynamic duo, the tag team champions, but really got an assortment of great mons to kind of put around it. Corviknight has always been really, really great to just have that steel type to deal with. Fairy types also get you some Tailwind. Hydreigon, of course, has shown how great it is, whether it's piloted by Wolf or anybody else. Just having that Scarf, being able to put immediate pressure on to with the Dracos, Dark Pulses, Heat Waves, and Snarls. And Scovillain has been, ever since its inception, having that Mega, everybody's been kind of like, you know what, this is pretty good. Just being able to get the chance to just like, hey, I can burn something just because you hit into me. And Houndstone wasn't necessarily big in VGC wise, been big on the pocket side, but good to see it find its way. And of course, having that body press and having Will-O-Wisp is just a fantastic addition to add to this already great core.
Yeah, I feel like Sand has kind of been flying a little bit under the radar, even in Regulation MA. It was kind of, Sand wasn't exactly the most popular weather option, but I mean, Tyranitar still has a lot of merit in these formats due to the prevalence of Charizard, so it's always a good Pokemon to have in the back pocket. But what I really like about this team is that you have those fast burst options with Excadrill, T-Tar, that classic Sand combination, but you do also have the ability to slow down the game a lot with Scovillain being able to just spread burns and provide some crucial redirection support for something like Corviknight to start setting up bulk ups. So you have a lot of different ways that you can play this team, and I think it has a good good mix of offense and defense, and you can sort of play two different modes depending on the matchup. But judging by the opponent's team here, Ion's going with the sort of tailwind hyper offense sort of style of team with the Mega Floette, the Charcoal Talonflame, which we saw pick up a little bit towards the end of Regulation MA, with the Charcoal Overheat being able to get some cool knockouts and kind of being able to bypass the Intimidates, and some regular mainstays of the format. We have King Gambit with Choppleberry. Interestingly, not running Kowtow Cleave, actually just opting for Sucker Punch as the primary dark type attacking option. And then we have Citrus Berry, Garchomp, Colbur Berry, Sinisha, which is a resist berry we're not used to seeing a lot on it, but it could be impactful in this matchup with the presence of the Hydreigon. Also pretty good into King Gambit as well. And then we also have a new addition in Golden Go, back to its old tricks with the standard 3 attacks Life Orb set.
I mean, I just want to take a moment just because justice for my boy Goldango. I'm not really happy about the nerfs, but I mean, still great, of course, with the Life Orb just opting to just like, hey, I can just go ahead and just do a amount of burst damage. But the -2 and the potential to miss really does hurt my soul. I'm not gonna lie to you, but still a great option. And Talonflame, ever since being here, has been kind of great. I mean, a lot of people find some different ways to kind of use it, but having that priority Tailwind or even Brave Bird's always great. And of course, one of the darlings of the format of King Gambit and Mega Floette, you know what they do. It's interesting just seeing that, oh, okay, I'm just going to opt for just Sucker Punch like you said, and just having Low Kick instead. So prioritizing, hey, I need to hit other things like the Tyranitar opposing King Gambits are more prevalent in how this team makeup's kind of gone. So I'm interested to see what the leads are going to be and how this team kind of plays out, because it does have that strength sap. So it can also, against a lot of physical attackers, can slow the game down just a little bit. And so kind of interesting how this is going to lead. And what do you think as we get into team preview here?
I think definitely if you're Ions, you do have a lot of tools that could be very nice into the Sand matchup. Obviously, I think Talonflame, it's it's a Pokemon that could be really good if it sticks around, but I think it's going to have a hard time sticking around in the
Yeah.
presence of stuff like Tyranitar and Nectadrill. So it might just be a situation where, okay, Talonflame gets a Tailwind up and it just immediately goes down to a Rock Slide. But if it's able to stick around, I think Overheat is actually a very valuable move here because, especially into that Corviknight, because now you don't have to rely on Flare Blitz to potentially hit through those bulk up boosts. But, you could also match Tailwinds and yeah, just like get that speed control immediately. But we're going to see Talonflame, Garchomp going up against the Corviknight and Scovillain as our leads here.
Yeah, you're just talking about Talonflame, and that's immediately what we see here. And honestly, Corviknight not really in the best spot to want to see that. And honestly, Garchomp and Talonflame are really good just into the Scovillain. You put on a lot of pressure all around, so you kind of put the onus on Kyogre to kind of like, wait, I don't really necessarily like this. I want to kind of like reposition myself, where you could just potentially just, hey, I can just scout myself and just wait to see what you're gonna do because I have two of the most offensive ones in this lead here. As we do see the Mega and just a Tailwind here as we go for Rock Slide. Does miss the Corviknight, but doing a good amount of damage. Of course, that burn, and we do see a matching Tailwind, so you do get a flinch, which is really nice. But I mean, for all intents and purposes, it kind of sucks to have to eat that burn, but such is the matchup.
Yeah, I was going to say Talonflame is actually a really nice Pokemon to have against Scovillain because not only does it threaten it with super effective Brave Birds, but also is able to bypass the burn effect being a fire type. So it's a really, really nice Pokemon to have into Scovillain, but not really opting to be offensive into the Scovillain turn one, just instead opting for a Rock Slide. You do miss the Corviknight, but I do think the chip damage is probably negligible at this point, especially if you're risking the burn on the Garchomp. So that burn probably going to be a little bit of a factor later on here. But with the chip on the Scovillain, yeah, that Brave Bird is easily able to get the knockout. Talonflame's Gale Wings is going to be broken, but the Earthquake there, yeah, it's just not going to be hitting super hard into the Tyranitar. But sometimes in these matchups, just having the ground coverage is really nice, like just having Garchomp as a Pokemon. So maybe the burn won't be too impactful here.
Yeah, and just being able to, like, even though it's burned, that's still a significant amount of damage. You kind of like slowly chip it away at it. And I think that's the most important part. And you can honestly save Talonflame for later just because you do get those quality overheats for later, as we do see Houndstone take the field. And if right now I feel like I'm in a pretty good position. You could potentially even just protect here just to get off another turn where you can just go for another Earthquake here and just continue to chip away at it, because Garchomp, really, unless you're going to use it for fodder, you might as well get out as much damage as you can from it. And Talonflame, you want to keep healthy because it still is valuable in this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, Garchomp, I think it is in a position where it just kind of wants to throw off as much damage as possible. And I think getting rid of the Talonflame is actually big because it removes Garchomp's #1 Earthquake partner. So, I mean, it kind of gives Garchomp a little bit more hesitation with clicking Earthquake into the future, possibly just wanting to save that Tyranitar, keep it healthy. Interestingly, the Houndstone's last respects will only be hitting for 100 base power since there's only one knockout on the board here, and Houndstone is significantly weaker than something like Basculegion because it doesn't have that adaptability. So it does fire off a last respects into the King Gambit switch in, as Corviknight is going to take this opportunity to get a bulk up off.
Yeah, really great bulk up there, and I was not surprised just looking at the board set. I was like, if King Gambit is here, this is the perfect spot, just because you did see the last respects come out. So this is a really great spot. You can potentially throw out a super effective attack and clear out the Houndstone. And even if you potentially think of like, oh, maybe Tyranitar comes in, I can go ahead and just go for a low kick. But instead, we just see a nice defensive position, getting up another bulk up and a protect as Mega Floette and Talonflame once again emerge on the field. And if you're Kyogre, you're kind of okay because you did set up your Corviknight, even though you may potentially have to eat an overheat. I mean, honestly, this is still a great spot for you.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good spot for Corviknight because now you have +2 attack, +2 defense. You don't have the Iron Head on this set, so you don't have the ability, I think, to remove the Floette immediately, so you might have to take an attack. But the good news is Houndstone, that last respect's probably enough to just get rid of this Talonflame, which is immediately the biggest threat to the Corviknight. But Ion's going to do a very smart protect here and just preserve the Talonflame. Is going to lose the Houndstone in the process, but getting the yeah, having Tyranitar and Corviknight now in this position, I mean, losing the Houndstone is a little bit problematic now because the Talonflame may be able to get an attack off here if you're able to stall out this Tailwind and end game it versus that Corviknight. But the T-Tar already being chipped a lot here maybe makes this a little bit more complicated, as Garchomp going to come back into the field here.
Another bulk up from the Corviknight, so opting to go all in to see a huge knockoff there. being able to do a good amount of damage to Garchomp. So now Garchomp, it's only a matter of time because of that burn damage on a timer, but the Mega Floet kind of in a nice position, but I mean, with the Corviknight going for another bulk up here, kind of slowly you're starting to worry. Like, you're going to need to, of course, that end game. This is why you save the Tyranitar. I mean, not the Tyranitar, the Talonflame, excuse me. But a Brave Bird goes into the King Gambit switching, which honestly not bad. And a nice low kick read there to go ahead and take out the King Gambit as we see another Earthquake here. And once again, even though it's burned, it's actually doing a significant amount of damage.
Yeah, I really like the game plan here from Ions, but I see I think Kyogre has kind of caught on to the fact. It's like, I think if you end the Tailwind turns with the Talonflame and the Floette healthy, I think Ions is able to take it because you just have Overheat and Dazzling Gleam to clean things up. But you're just trying to get the most mileage out of the Tailwind here. But there's only one more turn left and the opportunity to protect Garchomp. If it goes down this turn, that means you just get a free switch in back to the Floette. So I think Ions is content to let the Garchomp go down here. The other bulk up might not be what saves this Corviknight here. I guess it's going to depend on how much this Overheat does, and I'm willing to bet with the Charcoal boost Overheat, if it doesn't just knock out the Corviknight, it will easily be able to go down.
Floette,
yeah,
sure.
Dazzling Gleam. So as long as, you know, Talonflame decides to hit its moves here, then I think this is a pretty good position for Ions. Yeah, the Charcoal boosted Overheat removes the Corviknight, and Tyranitar being at such low HP, not going to be able to do the 1v2 here.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things we talked about in team preview was being able to slow the game down, and this was one of those. It was kind of really methodical switching, knowing Ion's just absolutely playing it marvelously. Like, hey, wait a minute. The only way you really can beat me is Corviknight. What if I just kind of continuously play around you chasing after the Talonflame? Chasing the bird is the hardest thing to do because everything else really got cleared out. And even though Garchomp was burned, it worked out because you just kept being a threat to just continuously do little chip damage, little chip damage, little chip damage. And the Houndstone, even though as great as it could have been, really didn't get a chance to do anything because it got caught in a position and it went down to a Moonblast. So if you're Kyogre, how do you not be stuck in the game of chase the birdie?
I see the idea behind bringing Scoville in here, like getting the burns on stuff like Garchomp, King Gambit, like also very, very valuable. But Garchomp was still able to do plenty, even though it was burned. But it just kind of went down so early. And I think, like, if Kyogre wants to end game with the Corviknight, the number one thing they have to keep in mind here is the Talonflame. The Talonflame is an easy Pokemon to remove in theory, but it is a Pokemon that, if it sticks around, can be very problematic for that Corviknight in the end game. But we're going to see a switch up here from Kyogre's side, going to lead the Hydreigon next to the Corviknight this game as opposed to the Scovillain.
Yeah, this one's interesting because we do know that Choice Scarf, that immediate just like, hey, I'm going to put on a lot of damage because I can Draco, I can Snarl, I can Dark Pulse, I can Heat Wave. So opting to just like, hey, I'm not dealing with this anymore. I need to put immediate pressure, trying to potentially catch the Dragon Pulse here, or maybe, the Draco, but instead just a Snarl. And that's honestly a really great call there, knowing that if I lock myself in the Draco, that's an easy switch for you. I'd rather just try to nerf your damage with your special attacker if it was like potentially the Goldingo or anything. Granted, if it was a King Gambit that switched in that slot, we would be having a whole different conversation. But honestly, pretty good turn. You got a Tailwind up, but Talonflame can still get up a Tailwind here. But the Snarl, I think, is the biggest thing because now Floette, even with the Fairy Aura, doesn't do as much damage, but you do still threaten the Hydreigon.
Yeah, I think it'll be close into the Talonflame, but the downside about locking into Snarl here is that Floette doesn't really care about Snarl when facing down a Hydreigon, and also this means you're locking into a weaker attack, so Talonflame doesn't have to go for a Tailwind.
Ooh.
Like, yeah, there's the Overheat into the Excadrill switch in, taking it down to the Focus Sash, and with the Dazzling Gleam, that's just able to pick up the knockout. And that's a huge critical hit because with that special attack drop, that Dazzling Gleam was not doing any damage to the Tyranitar in the sand, but actually making Dazzling Gleam doing some very meaningful damage there. So yeah, you just lose the Excadrill for free, and yeah, even though you have the Tailwind advantage, you have a heavily damaged Tyranitar, Excadrill's already down, and Hydreigon and Corviknight don't really want to be in this position, but I guess the drops on the special attack may make Corviknight a little bit easier to bring in here, but it's still not a safe position even with the Tailwind advantage.
Yeah, this is a really tough spot because Talonflame can easily swap out for a Garchomp or anything else, and you can continue to spam damage with Floette, honestly. You lose nothing by it. You potentially, at worst, take Rock Slide damage, but you can live that, and then even with if you go to -2, the problem is you're 4 times weak to this, so Hydreigon really, it's critical what you log yourself into because you're gonna have to potentially take some more damage here, which I don't think you'll really like. So Kyogre's in a really tough spot, and I'm just not sure how you can potentially endgame this cleanly just because you took so much damage. You see the King Gambit switch in, potentially trying to catch the Snarl here. Dark Pulse does go into that slot, and we do see just a Rock Slide come out, so a pretty neutral turn. You did take a lot of damage incoming into the King Gambit, but honestly, not too bad. There's only one more turn to Tailwind, so you know what you're locked into, and I'm just trying to figure out, okay, what does the end game look like, because the Talonflame's still a problem for the Corviknight to deal with.
Yeah, this is a really good position for Ions to be able to stall out the remainder of the Tailwind, and then like basically once you're able to get Floette back in safely, can kind of just start clicking Dazzling Gleam, and then once you're able to finally get that Talonflame back on the board, we kind of just see it a repeat of the end game from last game where you're just able to click Dazzling Gleam and Overheat and just pick up the Corviknight. But Tyranitar are going to switch back out here as Garchomp comes back in. You can bring that Pokemon in safely knowing that the Hydreigon is locked into Dark Pulse. Still does a really good amount of damage to Garchomp, but crucially not able to get the knockout. And now you're in a situation where there is no Tailwind up. Garchomp has the ability to take the knockout onto this Hydreigon, and if, Kyogre wants to switch into that Tyranitar is going to go down to Dragon Claw too, but maybe might be necessary to remove or to recycle in the Hydreigon to maybe have a chance to go for Draco Meteor here. But no, just going for Dark Pulse into the Garchomp. Garchomp just going to fire off a Rock Slide, and Corviknight sets up yet another Tailwind as Low Kick goes into the from the King Gambit goes into Hydreigon, and suddenly Kyogre is down to 2 Pokemon, has the Tailwind back up, but at this point it might be too little too late.
Yeah, I mean, you're in a tough spot. You have Rock Slide. I mean, I guess you can Rock Slide your way to victory here, and I think you probably have to start just getting off some damage, because if you start bulking up here, you're kind of wasting your own Tailwind turns, because we just know as soon as Talonflame comes in, we're still in the problematic position. So if you could potentially use Corviknight to take some KOs here, that maybe can force something out here, but King Gambit really, really healthy and really not threatened by much, and Garchomp kind of just, hey, I'm just here to do some damage, do some chip, but does go for the Protect here, and so just a double Protect stalling out just to kind of see, and gets a free bulk up out of it. Well, let's see how far it'll last, and of course the sand going down really doesn't help for the special defense of the Tyranitar for whenever Mega Floette comes back in. So what do you think is the plan if you're Kyogre? How do you climb yourself out of this hole?
I don't know. It's really tough because I kind of just see a repeat of the last game kind of coming back. I think once Floette and Talonflame are able to come back in, like I think it just you kind of just repeat the same type of end game. But Floette going to come back in, going to take the +1 Brave Bird. So Floette is going to go down here, and King Gambit with the Chople Berry, not able to hang on from the low kick. So Ion's going to sacrifice 2 of their Pokemon here, but maybe not going to matter that much because you still have a situation where you have a double protect option.
Yep.
And we already saw that Overheat is able to KO Corviknight from full HP. So provided Talonflame connects the Overheat, I think you just have a pretty simple double protect, stall at the last turn of Tailwind, and then you can just pick up 2 KOs to win the game.
Yeah, it was a really great just to get some KOs, give you some confidence. But once again, like you alluded to, once Talonflame gets in, as long as you have something that can do damage to Tyranitar, which Garchomp does exquisitely, you're kind of in a tough spot here. So this is just a natural, you don't even need to set up Tailwind because you naturally outspeed both. You can go for the Overheat, you can go for a Earthquake here, or Dragon Claw, whichever one you kind of just know will pick up that little 15%. We do see the double Protect go up, but the Overheat once again is kind of the problem, and it takes out the Talonflame. The Talonflame takes out the Corviknight, excuse me, and once again now it's Tyranitar versus the world, and you're kind of in a tough spot because you don't really have enough to take out both, and we do see the forfeit there. So Kyogre, unfortunately, knowing that, hey, the writing is on the wall, and Ion's going on to the next round of Top Cut with a marvelously well-played Talonflame in this matchup.
Yeah, I think the Talonflame surviving as long as it did was the X factor in this game, because that Overheat was just so crucial in cleaning up the Corviknight, and I think Ion's team would have really, really struggled to deal with that Corviknight in the end game had Talonflame been taken out earlier. But it was just a really well played game in terms of positioning your pieces there, and just getting, stalling out two different sets of Tailwind to finally get your Mons in good enough position. Unfortunately, Kyogre, a little bit of unfortunate RNG with the critical hit on the Tyranitar, but I still think, regardless, the positioning game was very much won by Ions in that game, and they deservingly will be moving on to top 4.
Yeah, just a really marvelously well played, and yeah, really not much you can say. A really great match by both, but unfortunately the matchup and really understanding the chess game of where to put certain mons in a position to succeed was really everything. Corviknight tried its best, but unfortunately, when you have Overheat and a Talonflame there, it really makes it tough. So, you know, good on them, and good luck to everybody else moving forward. But Eric, I appreciate you casting with me, man. It's good to chat with you, bro.
Yeah, it was a fun set, and I was glad to be brought back on for one more set. But yeah, that's going to be it for our top 8 coverage. We will be back shortly after a short break, and we'll catch you guys up with top 4 coming up soon.
All right. Later, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Top 4 of the Smogon Summer Major for VGC. I'm Jump Across the Fourth, and I'm joined by Josh Lorsey. Josh, how are you doing?
Good. How's everything, Choppa? Excited to cast this top four with you. We've been here before, but this is with Smogon now, so I'm excited to be back with a wonderful commentator like yourself, especially with these wonderful competitors that we have in top four.
Yeah, the casting experience on Showdown has been so different from minigame. It's just like a lot faster paced, but that's kind of fun. Just means we really do not have a second to slow down, and that's going to be no different for this tournament. I'm sure some of you guys have been watching all day, but we are already getting ready for the top 4 of this tournament, and we have some really great matches ready for you guys.
Yeah, it seems like we're gonna have Ions and Rory ready to go here in this top four set. Interesting enough, I do like Rory's teams consisting of Charizard, Farigiraf, King Gambit, Sylveon, Aerodactyl, and Garchomp. Very, very standard stuff that we've been seeing from Regulation MA. And as for Ions, we have Eternal Floette, King Gambit, Garchomp, Talon, Sinistcha, and Goldango. So only one Pokemon here is like available in Regulation MB. As we come to the conclusion of this event, Chopper, what's your thoughts so far on the transition from Regulation MA to MB? I don't see any really crazy drastic changes from my part. It seems like the teams from Regulation MA are still strong and still powerful as we go on into Regulation MB, especially after looking at also VR's standings. It seems like everybody's just sticking to their guts from what they've been using from Regulation MA.
I know. I thought we might have seen a couple more changes taking place here. Like, let's say, I don't know, Pokemon like Golden Go and Annihilate on the come up, and then some of the new megas. It seems like, what is this? Not sure if Michael Durbasti and his Raichu are going to be able to advance to the top 4 or not. But yeah, definitely seeing a couple fewer of the new Pokemon than I would have expected. However, maybe in the long run, they're going to have a little bit more time to be built out. I think it's probably really tough to be told, like, hey, here's these cool new Pokemon. You've got a couple days to like try and build a team that can make it to top cut of a big online tournament like this. Or you could use a standard team from MA, like the ones that, made it to finals of NAIC and are just extremely battle tested, like this for a graph team. I think that's something that's probably going to tip the scales a little bit in favor of existing teams. That it's not only like the teams are very stable, it's the players are very stable. For all I know, Roy Ram might be someone with tons of experience with this archetype by now, who's really familiar with it and just hasn't felt the need to update it for the new format yet.
Yeah, perfect. It seems like we do have the top 4 match between Ions and Rory ready to go in just a moment here. And yeah, I would definitely have to agree with you. This regulation has been showing that everybody's just kind of just sticking to their guts and using comfort over creativity. But we have seen some creative teams. But let's take a look at team preview here versus Rory and Ions here, Chuba. That Charizard, how do you feel about it in this matchup against Garchomp and Talonflame and Friends?
Definitely seems like it's going to be a strong pick. I mean, on Ion's team, it seems like Garchomp is the only like very natural stop to the Charizard. Especially like, let's say King Gambit is normally a Pokemon that can do okay against Charizard if you get those boosts going on your something like a Black Glasses Sucker Punch. However, with a Farigiraf in the equation, that's just going to make that King Gambit and Charizard matchup entirely Charizard favorite at that point. I definitely think Ions has a couple of cool techs that could help them with the Charizard, but ultimately it's something I expect to be a strong player here.
Yes, and going back to the Charizard team of Rory, this is definitely a Spaniard style of Regulation MA team that both Pokey Alex and Eric Rios both piloted to both have great success. Pokey Alex getting top 16 with this team, and Eric Rios, as we know, getting second. So I'm very interested to see like these 6 months so far going from Regulation MB and seeing this transition. It seems like it's here to stay. And as for Ions, I do think that it's up to the Garchomp here to deal with the Charizard. We also, I think, have Aerodactyl with that Y-Guard, so we could potentially see both Charizard and Aerodactyl coming on the end of Rory to have a great or decent matchup into the opposing Pokemon of Ions.
One thing about Ion's team that I like, that I think I'm actually like pretty surprised about how common this has been this format, is the Life Orb Power Gem Golden Go they have. With like the nasty plot Make It Rain set of Golden Go becoming a little bit weaker, I think you have more of these Golden Go opting for moves just like 3 attacks and then protect, and then probably that last attack is going to be something like a Power Gem to really extend Golden Go's coverage. I'm pretty sure that's just going to be strong enough to knock out any Charizard, and knowing that, Golden Go actually seems like it could be like a pretty strong lead against a lot of the Pokemon Roy Ray is using. However, it does have that, King Gambit, always a boogeyman of Golden Go last generation. This generation, it is no different, except the King Gambit is 70% usage now. So I think that is going to be Golden Go's like maybe most consistent counter on Royre's team.
Yeah, and I think I overlooked that a little bit. Yeah, that seeing in the team Talonflame Goldango seems like a very good lead on the end of Ions, and we do see that straight ahead into Aerodactyl and Sylveon. So with Aerodactyl having wide guard, this could be a little tricky, but I'm not feeling too bad if I'm Ions here with this lead.
No, I think the thing is, like, the Aerodactyl is going to feel so much pressure to go for that wide guard here, and after it's gone for one of those, it's like, okay, so now you know the Aerodactyl is, the Aerodactyl is just going to leave for King Gambit as Sylveon protects, Talonflame goes for Tailwind, and Golden Go goes for Power Gem into the King Gambit swap.
So I do like that defensive stretch on the end of Rory, right? Eating up that Power Gem, reducing Goldango's health points down to 90%, and putting it in potential Sucker Punch range here. So Rory, with a nice defensive switch to now be in a pretty optimal position here against Talonflame and Goldango.
Yeah, and the nice thing about this King Gambit on the field is when you're locking down that Golden Go with something like a Sucker Punch here, now your Sylveon is free to attack. You don't really have to worry about a Make It Rain if you're clicking Sucker Punch on the Golden Go, and that is going to put Roy Red back into control of the game. It's actually going to be King Gambit withdrawing for Aerodactyl as Golden Go goes for Protect.
Let's see that overheat land into that Aerodactyl doing about 37%. Hyper Voice into the Talonflame is going to break that Gale Wings. Tailwind is up on the end of Ion, so this is not too bad, but I feel like we're just back to turn one here with positioning.
Yeah, the Aerodactyl still feels like it has so much pressure to go for that wide guard or something like a King Gambit swap. Yep, it's just another swap back into King Gambit, another Protect from Sylveon, and an overheat hitting the King Gambit as it comes in. One hit knockout from 75% with the critical hit.
So I really do like that call on Ions, and it's like, all right, if you decide to stay in, okay, I'll eat out maybe a Hyper Voice, but you're forced to wide guard here, so that means your Aerodactyl's not attacking. But if you do decide to switch, my overheat's going to land into your King Gambit and or friends, and it'll do a significant amount of damage, following up with that Make It Rain. So I really do like that play by Ions. Advancing the board state Tailwind, we only have one turn of Tailwind left, and having Make It Rain available and being a potential knockout range for Sylveon with that Life set, this is a really good spot if I'm Ions.
Yeah, Golden Go, especially with the fact that Ions is probably going to be able to get up another Tailwind at this point with only one turn left, and I believe the Talonflame can just protect to stall out the Tailwind if it wants to. Golden Go still seems like it's going to be in control of the game. It's actually Talonflame swapping out for Floette as a Power Gem comes in and one-shots the Charizard.
Wow, Power Gem knocking out that Charizard here. I think Rory felt like his back was against the wall. Wanted to get a call right that turn, but Ion just playing pretty safe and saying, hey, your Sylveon is not doing anything on this board. I don't care what it decides to do. I need to get rid of this Charizard. Even if you decide to protect it the following turn, I could go for the Power Gem that will either knock out the Charizard and or knock out the Aerodactyl in the back. So I do like the positioning play here for Ions having full board control here. And now Rory kind of back against the wall with two Pokemon left with the Aerodactyl and Sylveon.
Ooh, Floette activating that Mega Evolution. Golden Go dodging a Rock Slide. Floette flinching. Golden Go able to respond with a Make It Rain, though. That's just a double knockout to seal a 4-0 victory in the first game for Ions.
Wow, what a game one, right? I only have one name to say out of that game one, Choppa.
Goldango. I'm glad he is still putting in some work in this format. I think that game just made such a good case for like, okay, your Golden Go might need to run Power Gem right now, but if you do, Golden Go can absolutely keep up with a lot of these like top Pokemon. I think especially like it feels like Ion's got the lead right there. Royro really had to play on the back foot, starting with like not only the Sylveon but also the Aerodactyl against Golden Go, just two Pokemon worried about that one-shot knockout from it, and they were really, the side that had to play catch-up from that point.
So now, in terms of adjustments, what do you want to see on the end of Rory here, as you do see the King Gambit in for a graph?
Oh, yeah, I think this is definitely a good start. I think looking at that Trick Room button to try and really put the speed control in favor of Pokemon like King Gambit is a smart adjustment from them. Yeah,
but I do like Ion's adjustment here. This King Gambit does not have Protect, so it's free to just go for maybe an Overheat and Dazzling Gleam and KO this King Gambit here. So let's see what it decides to do. Overheat is going to go into the King Gambit and miss.
That is a colossal miss. It allows King Gambit to make it out of the turn and connect an Iron Head onto the Floette. A one-shot knockout from the Thunderbolt too. Royra is out for blood here, and they are already up 4-2.
Wow. what a turn of events in game two. Great positioning by Ions, but we do know those inaccurate moves will definitely, in a tournament like this, with so many rounds, you're definitely going to start missing moves, and we seen it there, and it happens. So, down to your two last Pokemon, but I'm happy if these are my two last Pokemon, if that makes sense. So, Garchomp and Glenn are putting on immense offensive pressure here. Kingambit can't protect. Also, the Fergraph can't protect, and it doesn't have that Citrus Berry that it normally does carry. It does carry that expert belt, so we could potentially just see maybe a protect and EQ play. It seems pretty safe. It should pick up the knockout on both opposing Pokemon with that
I'm a
Life
little
Orb.
bit skeptical of whether it's going to be able to knock out the Fergraph because I don't think this is it's not Life Orb Chomp. It's going to be that
Oh.
Citrus set. So like yeah, because the Golden Go is holding the Life Orb here, so we could
Yes,
still
you're
see
right.
something like a Sucker Punch to lock out the Golden Go. Maybe Fergraph try to go for Trick Room. Just say I think I can barely live this Earthquake. I wonder if that's going to be the right way to go though, because if you lose your Kingambit here, it's definitely going to be a little bit harder to deal with the Golden Go. Maybe we could see something like Kingambit go down and be replaced by a Sylveon next, and then Charizard back. It's actually Charizard coming out right away as Golden Go protects.
It's going to be the protected EQ play that I mentioned. Fergraph, like you mentioned, is going to live and take that pretty well, if I do say so myself. And Tween doing really, really decent damage here. And Charizard now in for Rory. I'm feeling good if I'm Rory. Although, like, you got a little bit lucky, right? But it is what it is. Let's see what these trainers decide to go for. Rory's going for the helping hand. Rock Slide. It's going to miss that Fergraph, and it's going to miss the Charizard.
Oh my god. The Charizard swap right away was so bold from Roy, saying like, okay, I know I can take the Rock Slide, and I don't think I'm going to get flinched by it, which seems like it's what ended up happening here. I think the reveal of the Garchomp in the back instead of something like a Sylveon really contextualizes this. This was not a Trick Room game from Roy Red. This was like, okay, I'm just going to use my Fergraph to tank some hits, and then, kind of fight back from there.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Just trading hits there. I definitely assumed Sylveon in the back, but it's good that Ions got to see exactly what game plan that Rory was deciding to go for in this game 3. If I'm Ions, I don't think I'm feeling too upset about that game. If things went right, it could have been potentially a whole different outcome. So just, feel confident in what you're bringing and just play your game. I do really just like Talonflame Goldengo. It just respects a lot on the team, but as we mentioned, that Kingambit is a little bit threatening, but I don't think a Sucker Punch from a Focus Sash Kingambit will pick up Goldengo. So I like I said, I really do like Goldengo as a lead, just putting on offensive pressure, and that Talonflame with that priority Tailwind with that Gale Wings is a really good combo with these two.
You're totally right. I think the fact that it's a Focus Sash Kingambit is definitely going to mess with some of that mental math on how much the Sucker Punch is going to do to Golden Go. I'm sure Ions is that's probably a calc they know, and they're going to have an idea of how aggressively they can throw this Golden Go at the Kingambit. I think if I'm Ions, it feels like I'm kind of deciding between Talonflame and then one of Golden Go and Floette. I feel like if you can correctly predict which of those you want to use in the lead next to your Talonflame, you're going to be pretty happy about how the game is going to play out.
Yeah, 100% here. Trainers are taking their time. This is game 3 of top 4. Rory versus Ions. Winner goes to the finals. This is only one adjustment left you can make. This is the last game. Like I said, I do really like that Talonflame Goldengo lead. I don't see nothing wrong with that. But maybe Rory might adapt to that, knowing that is the best lead, and go for their best lead into that. And that's what it comes with these best of 3 sets sometimes. These mind games, especially a team like Rory's, they have multiple lead options, right? They have Aerodactyl Kingambit as a lead, Farig Kingambit as a lead, Aerodactyl Sylveon. There's so many options with this team, and hence why a lot of players had great success with it in NEIC. It's a very, very strong team in Regulation MA, and been proven to be really strong in Regulation MB here, now getting top 4 of one of the biggest online tournaments so far in Regulation MB.
I think Ion's team is definitely interesting, but probably a little bit less battle tested. It feels like it's really trying to make the most of this new Pokemon Golden Go and pair it with some of the existing faces of the format. However, looks like we have the leads here. It is going to be Kingambit and Fergraph staring down Ion's Talonflame and Golden Go. That's Kingambit withdrawing right away for Charizard. Not exactly tanking the overheat on Switch in.
Not taking that overheat. Oh, my. Is that?
Oh no!
Did that just knock out? Oh my god.
That was 3. That was 2 critical hits in 3 moves.
I have no words. I can't even like I don't even know what to say here. Wow. Well, what an interesting position we're in right now. Charizard at 11% of health. King Gambit definitely at full, but now Goldango potentially in that sucker punch range could make things a little bit awkward. If I'm Rory, you're not out of the game. You could get a potential turn, some turns correct, and bring yourself back in. Although this Charizard is at low health, you can make the most out of it and potentially get off damaging or switching. But it does look a little rough because of the amount of health you have left. So let's see what these trainers decide to do. Ion's getting his revenge for that game 2 luck, and now paying off here in game 3.
I guess if anything, the Talonflame and the Golden Go both do have those -2 special attack drops, like no matter how hard they try. I don't actually know if they'd be able to knock out King Gambit this turn, but one side has like lost about half of their team's entire health, and on Ion's side, you've only taken Life Orb chip on your Golden Go. I think it's going to be extremely, extremely difficult for Rory to make up this, disadvantage.
Yeah, it's looking really rough here just because the Talonflame does have that priority tailwind here. If the Pokemon in the back want to outspeed everything that Rory has, it potentially can. Charizard is just going to Mega Evolve here, and we're just going to see a Protect and Switch. Sucker Punch going into a failed slot, and Heat Wave doing a sizable amount of chunk of damage to that Garchomp here. So Rory getting a little frisky there with their Charizard and saying like, hey, I'm my back is against the wall. I just need to try to get up damage, and if I can, I'll do it. And it worked out in their favor.
Sylveon coming in for the King Gambit, taking that overheat on swap in. This is just a safe Dragon Claw from from Garchomp to knock out the Charizard and put the score down to a 2-4 disadvantage for Rory.
Yeah, looking like backs against the wall. King Gambit can protect here. We have a pretty much safe EQ and overheat play into that King Gambit. I think Sylveon could definitely go for like maybe a quick attack sucker punch play with that King Gambit into the Garchomp slot and potentially knock it out. But let's see what these trainers decide to do. It's just going to be a Brave Bird into Sylveon.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, I'm surprised this was like Brave Bird into Sylveon instead of putting damage on King Gambit. Ooh, the quick attack and soccer, not enough to knock out Garchomp. That's absolutely critical because it means there's no way to stop this Earthquake from coming out.
No way to stop this Earthquake. King Gambit left all alone against the 4 opposing Pokemon on Ion's end, and it looks like Ion's is going to be the first final competitor in this Smogon VGC major.
Yeah, really well-played game by both sides. I think I don't know, it feels pretty promising for Ion's team that they were able to go up against a team as standard as Royals and find a way to come out on top with this, the offense provided by Talonflame and then, Pokemon like Garchomp, Golden Go, and Floette.
Yeah, and it seems like we do have the winner between Michael DeBesting and Burning Blazer. Burning Blazer is going to win that set 2-1, so we will be getting you that other top 4 set ready to go in a couple minutes. But yeah, man, Talonflame Goldango, let's talk about it. How strong was that into that Zard slop-ish team there, Chuppa, that we've been seeing?
It looked really good. I don't know that, I am someone that really, really loves using Golden Go. It's just one of my absolute favorite Pokemon. So it fills me with optimism to see Golden Go like still kicking it with all of these like new strong Pokemon.
I would have to agree with you here. And we do have the teams here, Waffle Simp and Burning Blazer, just using. We're playing Regulation MA at this point, guys. I'm not gonna lie to you. There's nothing. I mean, we have a couple different changes. Swampert's pretty cool. The Goldangles are really cool. Staraptor is just a fade. Like people are just using it because it's new toy system. I'll definitely see it probably dropping sooner or later. But besides that, I'm not seeing any crazy changes from these top teams. And I don't know, man. I'm indifferent about it. I personally do like the fact that it's similar stuff from Regulation MA. Like somebody like with a busier schedule than most might have great success in formats like these where a lot of the teams don't change. So your game plans into set teams are a lot easier to manage to get around when things aren't changing drastically within a format. So I don't know, what's your thoughts on Regulation MA and MB's just similarities so far?
I feel like I wish we'd seen slightly bigger changes. Some of the new Pokemon feel like they definitely represent attempts at changing things up. Like, let's say Staraptor is, I think, a Pokemon that we're kind of in the process of figuring out whether it's good. The answer is probably less good than a lot of us thought at first. But hey, it's interesting. There's nothing else doing it like it does. I think Swampert's another pretty big change. I think that one Pokemon existing makes like Rain a much stronger archetype than it was at Regulation MA, where Rain was really starting to peter out at the end. So yeah, like we were saying though, I think a lot of the new Pokemon do kind of struggle to keep up with some of the old ones. I think, looking at this top four set is a good example of that. I think the only new change between the two of these teams here is the fact that one of these Garchomps was holding a Life Orb that it couldn't a week ago. And that is like, one of the most kosher, the most kosher changes you have going from MA into MB is just like, hey, your Garchomp can run a Life Orb now. Have fun.
Your Garchomp could be a lot stronger than it was before. Congratulations, trainers. Here you go. Now play regulation MV. That's just how it feels. But you know what? Like I said, I'm not too mad about it. I think that going into Worlds, this might make it very interesting. And this is where creativity is rewarded. And just to highlight a couple creative players that we've seen from the likes of Tub Nation, I think they had a very creative team going into... it was the last regional. I forgot the name of the last regional. Indianapolis regional.
Yeah, with
Indianapolis.
Yeah, the Frostlass.
Yeah, and then Wolfie with his creative Steelix team, and then going on to NAIC with the creative Toxapex team. And this is where I talk about VGC 2016 a lot in the sense where Worlds Wolfie won, right? Obviously with a very creative team, and when you don't know what to do into said team, it's a lot harder to play against instead of seeing something that repetitively and having lines into it. So I think that this is going to be one of the same situations where if you do have a strong team that is, I want to say, anti-meta or not, or doesn't follow along the lines of what the meta is, it should be a really strong option heading into the World Championships. But enough about the World Championships. Let's get into the top four set between Mafu Simp and Burning Blazer.
Looks like on Mafu Simp side, that's going to be a Frostlass, Scovillain, Basculegion, Kingambit, Sneasler, and Lycanroc, that standard Italian Lycanroc team that has been terrorizing the meta the past 2 weeks. And on Mapmaster's side, it's going to be Floette, Charizard, Kingambit, Whimsicott, Basking, Garchomp, just absolutely very standard team from the end of Regulation MA.
So we're going to see that Scovillain into that Basculegion and Charizard and Whimsicott on the end of Maddie Master. So if I'm Charizard, I'm feeling really good about here. We're going to see that Lycanroc switch out for that Basculegion and a Protect on the Scovillain slot.
Ooh, Moonblast coming out onto the Basculegion. This is Heat Wave to follow it up. Lycanroc is not surviving this combo. So I think what happened here is Mapmaster absolutely got the lead, right? Saying, I don't think there's going to be a Lycanroc in the start. Let me, begin with my Charizard and getting so much momentum off of that.
And yeah, Moonblast and Weather Ball falling up in that Scovillain slot, not getting the best of Moody Boost here. Wave Crash going into that Charizard, but Bulky Zard being able to withstand that and take that hit pretty well. And it is a 4-2 situation not 4-2, 4-1 situation for Minya. Can't even pronounce the name.
Minami.
Minami, there we go. But yeah, what a fast game one. What a fast game one.
Let's watch the next game a little bit slower if we can. But yeah, really fast stuff going on here. Looks like it's just going to be the Scoville and Basculegion lead again against Whimsicott and Floette on Mapmaster's side.
So I like to switch up, seeing as though you had great success with what you led game one. You would think your opponent would try to change their leads, and this is not a terrible optimization to game two. But the opposing trainer using the Scovillain and Basculegion lead as game one, I'm not mad at that either. We're going to just see Scovillain Mega Ball straight and just a Protect and switch play on the end of Maddie Master, switching to that Basculegion into a nice resist, but doing a sizable amount of chunk of damage, about 46%.
Yeah, really interesting swapping into Basculegion when you're up against a Mega Scovillain like this. I feel like they'd be worried about the burn. Oh, hey, if you're getting a one-shot knockout in exchange for that burn, that seems like a pretty fair trade for Mapmaster.
Pretty fair trade, and the last respects to follow, doing sizable amount of chunk of damage to that Garchomp. But we do have priority with Sucker Punch and Aqua Jet on the end of this trainer here. Maddie's, I wouldn't say their back is against the wall, but having Whimsicott and the Eternal Floette here in the back, I think against the opposing trainer's team here is going to be really, it's going to pay a lot of dividends here. But we're just going to see Protect on the end of Garchomp and Kingambit on the opposing.
Yeah, both players attacking into each other's protects. If anything, I feel like this might favor Minami a little bit more because it's going to give them the tools to go after that Garchomp spot. Here comes an Aqua Jet, and it's a whiff Sucker Punch into the Whimsicott swap, allowing Bastion Legion to connect another Wave Crash onto King Gambit, get itself knocked out in the process. And I don't think this is a bad thing when you have a Floette in the back like this. Like you were saying, I think the Floette and the Whimsicott are going to be a really strong duo to close out this game just with that fairy spam, because you have to remember, this is a Black Glasses double dark move King Gambit, not going to have anything that can immediately address either a Floette or a Whimsicott.
So Minami not being able to adjust, I think, to this throttle of damage on the end of Matty Master's team. We're just going to see a Swords Dance, though. Wait, hold on.
This is not the way that I expected this endgame to play out. I feel like taking that recoil on Light of Ruin is actually like really, really costly for Matt Master here.
Yeah, I would say it's really, really costly. I thought that Matt Master would have followed up with maybe a Moonblast Dazzling Clean just to get rid of that Gambit, but I think Minami's back in the game here with that Swords Dance here, putting immense pressure onto the Floette with knockout potential and the Whimsicott here as well. So let's see what these trainers decide to do. They're doing that Garchomp took a sizable amount of chunk of damage from that last respects early on, so everything is in range of the Sucker Punch. Sucker Punch to the Whimsicott. Whimsicott lives, Moonblast trades, and Dazzling Gleam to bring this Lycanroc down to 2% and a miss.
Oh,
a
no.
double miss.
Not
A
the
double miss from Minami. And Matt Master is your other finalist here. We have a finals of Ions and Matt Master for your Smogon VGC Major. So big shout outs to Minami and also Rory, right? They played phenomenal Pokemon to get to this point, and they do get compensated for it as well. So not a bad placing out of 800 plus competitors here. So shout outs and congratulations to them. But shout out and congratulations to Ions and Matty Master. This should be a wonderful final here in this tournament.
I think that last set is so interesting. Just like, obviously, this Lycanroc team kind of emerged because of its, in theory, positive matchup against standard Garchomp stuff. I think that's really like one of the reasons that team exists, or why it was so popular for the final two events of MA. But ultimately, it's not like it's always going to be able to beat Charizard. I still think there's kind of a lot of lead roulette going on there, and that's something that we saw Matt Master kind of be the player that was, coming out on top, or sorry, Burning Blazer being the player that was coming out on top in that matchup.
Yeah, so Burning Blazer moving on, but I mean, listen, it happens. I think that like with the Lycanroc team, it was definitely a great call heading into the tournament that was placed in Europe. Right, it had a wonderful conversion rate between the trainers that ran it and worked together, and even moving on to NEIC, right, it still had a pretty good success rate when people adopted it as well and brought it to the event. I think one, maybe top cutting, or two, I'm not too sure. But nonetheless, seeing the team back here and doing strong rotation MB is not a surprise. But Ions' team is also something I want to focus on as well, right? We've been talking about Ions' team, just the Talonflame and Goldango. How do you think that matches up to Burning Blazer's team?
I think, if anything, this might be a matchup that they're kind of going in ready for, just saying like, oh, I can use some of the same strategies with my Golden Go that I was using in that last game to sort of take down the other Charizard player in top four. However, just because this is going to be like that really standard take on Charizard they're up against, as opposed to like the Aerodactyl, Sylveon, Farigiraf version, maybe the matchup is going to play out very differently. However, I definitely think they could be using some of the same strategies here. One thing about Ion's team that I'm only noticing now is this King Gambit set. It's actually dropping Kowtow Cleave, which is like extremely, extremely rare for the format. But that's kind of an interesting way to like kind of weave together Protect, both of your like secondary coverage moves with Iron Head and Low Kick, and then just say like, hey, my dark coverage is going to come from Sucker Punch and not anything else.
Yeah, I'm seeing on the team of Ions, you do have double Shadow Ball here on Sinistcha and Goldango, so I think maybe they're overcompensating with that and saying, hey, I don't need Kowtow Cleave if I'm just trying to hit certain type of Pokemon with that move. I could probably drop it for Iron Head and respect the fairy types a lot more. And in a matchup where you're going to be facing against maybe Whimsicott and Floette potentially, I think that this is not a bad a moveset on this King Gambit here. But I want to talk about similarities. Let's talk a little bit about similarities with these two teams. Priority Tailwind and Damaging Mon. So we do have the Talonflame here with that Priority Gale Wings Tailwind, and we also see a Whimsicott here with a Prankster Priority Tailwind as well. So it's great to see that although two different Mons in two different modes, right, on these two opposing trainers' teams, but the idea of having something that could immediately give you Tailwind and give you great success with high damaging Pokemon, maybe like with the likes of like Goldango on the end of Ions and Eternal Floette, and also on the end of Burning Blazer with that Charizard, Eternal Floette, Garchomp, and Friends. So definitely seeing some similarities here on how to maneuver game plans with their team. So I really do like to see that as well.
How do you see the Talonflame versus Whimsicott matchup being played out? Because I think it's really interesting. The Talonflame is like, has the higher speed stat than Whimsicott, is usually going to be trained to outrun the Whimsicott, especially here with the naive nature on the Talonflame. But it doesn't get to keep that priority forever. I think that's just like one of the really interesting things about the way the two of them match up. Josh, do you see either of like Talonflame and Whimsicott kind of giving their side an advantage in this matchup?
I think Whimsicott on the end of Burning Blazes has a slight of an edge just because of the fact that I don't know. If you're going to bring Talonflame, I think you want to bring Goldango because Goldango's like really, really good uh, against. I'm sorry, Burning Blazers team. Random, just take a look at Burning Blazers team. The Power Gem hitting the Charizard, and you Make It Rain hitting potentially Whimsicott, Eternal Floette, and Friend Shadow Ball doing great damage to that Basket Legion, and also doing a sizable amount of to Garchomp. But the problem is the Whimsicott being able to also to match the Tailwind on Ions and have Pokemon outpace that Goldango. Potential Pokemon that can outpace it is Charizard and Garchomp. Both have high damaging moves. Charizard and Sun, obviously with the Heat Wave and Weather Ball, and Garchomp with the likes of that Life or with that Life Orb EQ, and King Gambit, right, with that Sucker Punch now. I think Cal's changed on this matchup.
Yeah, and this is going to be the Black Glasses King Gambit that we didn't actually see in the last matchup, that Golden Go had to go up against. This is a King Gambit that has a much better chance of actually being able to score a one-shot knockout on the Golden Go. I think especially seeing that this is going to be like a Whimsicott for that priority tailwind instead of Aerodactyl for the fast, but not necessarily priority tailwind, definitely makes Golden Go a lot less appealing here. I think, Golden Go against Charizard, you can make it work if your guy's faster, you're just going for that Power Gem one-shot. However, if the Charizard is faster, I think it's a lot likelier that Power Gem is never going to come out because your Golden Go will be knocked out by a Heat Wave in the meantime.
Exactly, Jumbo. So I think if I am Ions here, Goldango might have to come into that back until you could deal with opposing friends. I could see Talonflame and the Floette lead here doing really, really good against the likes of Whimsicott and Floette, but I don't know. It's still definitely hard to manage. I definitely do see Talonflame, Floette, Garchomp, and I don't know my fourth would be, but I think I would definitely lock in those three in this matchup. Sinister doesn't really bring too much here. I mean, if the Basket Legion comes, but I do think you have enough offensive pressure to deal with that Basket Legion, especially if you're matching Tailwind because your pieces should be faster than the Basket Legion. But we're going to see that Talonflame and Floette lead, like I mentioned, and Floette and Basket Legion on the end of Master.
This promises to be a very, very aggressive start to the game. Like, essentially all of these Pokemon are capable of doing huge amounts of damage to each other. I wonder if what Map Master is going for here is sort of just like offensively trading damage on the first turn of the game, maybe accepting that you're going to go down a Pokemon, but trying to do something like get a Talonflame knockout in the process, and then have a Whimsicott go for Tailwind a little bit later in the game. I feel like that's a trap that Ions could really easily fall into if they set their speed control a little bit too early and run out a bit later in the game if Map Master is able to delay their Tailwind. To counter that, Ions is going to have to make sure they're getting the important knockouts right at the start of the game.
Another thing to note is that the Floette on the end of Master is faster than the Floette on the end of Ions. Ions having a modest capability. So Talonflame might have to set up this Tailwind here just to outpace this Floette. Let's see what these trainers have to go for. No, it's just going to be a protect on the Talonflame, a double protect here just to kind of scout out and get a feel what Map Master decides to go for here, and it's just going to be the Aqua Jet and Dazzling Gleam into the Talonflame.
The Aqua Jet Dazzling Gleam does actually look pretty safe here because Aqua Jet is saying like, okay, even if Basket Legion goes down to something like a Fairy type move, still going to be making sure that I do some damage in the process. I don't know if the Floette on Map Master's side is actually like in danger of being knocked out before it goes for an attack here, because like you said, it is the faster Floette. It's actually Talonflame withdrawing for King Gambit right away, taking that Aqua Jet comfortably enough. Here comes a Dazzling Gleam, doing really sizable damage to both Pokemon, and a Light of Ruin to one-shot the Basket Legion on Map Master's side, and also get a knockout on Ions' own Floette.
Yeah, not the trade that I thought was going to happen that turn, Basket Legion for Eternal Floette. If I'm Map Master, I think I'm feeling pretty good about that, especially if Whimsicott is coming on the board here with that Focus Sash. So even if this Talonflame decides to go for a potential Brave Bird, you're still gonna withstand the turn and have to go for a Tailwind. And if you're Ions here, you might need to match Tailwind for the potential Pokemon you have in the back. If you don't, you could just get throttled by Floette and Whimsicott here with their high damaging fairy moves with that fairy aura ability on the end of Eternal Floette. So I'm interested to see what trainers decide to go for. It's just going to be, like I said, matching of the Tailwinds here. Sucker Punch into that Floette, knowing that this Kingambit has no turns to give, and Talonflame and Garchomp on the end of Ions, the last two remaining Pokemon, and Whimsicott and Floette, and potentially maybe Charizard in the back on the end of that Master, who knows, but definitely having 3 Pokemon here against 2 is really good.
Yep, Encore whiffing into the Talonflame, Rock Slide comes out. That is going to be a flinch on the Floette, which keeps the game going, but you have to remember, this Talonflame is still at Whimsicott's mercy when it comes down to being locked out by that Encore. I would not be shocked if this is a Garchomp and Floette speed tie if they're both trained to be the fastest they can. Encore connects against the Talonflame, Talonflame, goes for meaningless protect, and we do see confirmation that this is just a Garchomp and Floette speed tie. That's an easy wrap-up for Matt Master after they win the speed tie.
Yeah, if I'm Pat Master, I'm honestly feeling very good, especially not playing the Tailwind mirror on leads, right? Having that Tailwind option in the back and trading your Basket Legion for that Eternal Flood on the end of Ions is like a pretty good trade in my opinion. Yeah, Ions loses their high damaging Pokemon for a trade of a Basket Legion, which is yes a high damaging Pokemon, but the combination of Whimsicott and Eternal Flood on the end of Matt Master was so promising in that mid game, right? So if I'm Matt Master, I'm feeling really good about how I planned that game 1. Let's see adjustments for game 2. What are we thinking, Jeppo?
I wonder what Ions can do to make up for the fact that they have the slower Floette. I feel like just seeing their Floette kind of go second there and essentially only get like 1 attack off before going down was really costly for them. We do see them try to adjust with something like a Golden Go instead, but it feels like Matt Master really has the better of them with this Charizard lead.
I love it. I'm Matt Master not committing to game 1 with this lead and saying like, hey, I could beat you without this lead. And I'm going to make you feel like Talonflame Goldengo is a good option into what I brought into game 1, and then adjusting to Charizard and Whimsicott here, which overpowers Goldengo and maybe even Talonflame a little bit, right?
Yeah,
so,
if you're Ions here, I don't know how you're keeping up with just like a safe Tailwind Heatwave combo.
And that's exactly what we see, and that Goldengo is out of here, and Talonflame takes over half. This Charizard is sitting in a really good position, right? Like we mentioned, this Floette is modest. We don't know if it's... we definitely do know it's modest max speed because it definitely was speed tying, or was it speed tying with the Garchomp? No, I don't think...
No, because Matt Master's Garchomp is Jolly, I want to say.
Jolly.
Let me double check that. But yeah, this is a huge turn for Matt Master because like last game, once Talonflame loses that Gale Wings, and if it's gone for Tailwind, it is at Whimsicott's mercy right now. That's Kingambit swapping out for the Talonflame. Let's see what Whimsicott does. It's just a Moonblast into the Floette, knowing that they don't have to do anything about the Talonflame.
Yeah, if this Heat Wave... Oh, it misses! It misses the Kingambit.
To the Floette. Oh my gosh. Matt Master playing really aggressively and just getting knockout after knockout. I'm not sure if Kingambit and Talonflame are going to have a chance of getting back into the game here. I think the fact that Talonflame doesn't have a priority move here isn't actually the end of the world for Ions. I don't think they need that priority attack any longer. The most important thing is just that they're not getting Encore locked by the Whimsicott. There's a Brave Bird into the Whimsicott. Charizard able to go for Heat Wave to just get a double knockout and sealed a tournament win for Matt Master with Big 6 coming back from Regulation MA.
I want to quit Pokemon so bad. I cannot, but let me stop. Congratulations to Matt Master here, winning in a very dominating fashion, I would say. Although, like, it was dominating, we do need to point out why this set was dominated. But if we could go back to that game 1 leads, Matt Master not leading that Charizard and Whimsicott lead, which I thought was pretty strong going into Ions' team, and Matt Master basically committing and saying like, hey, if I could steal this game 1 with the potential lead of Eternal Floette and Basket Legion, I know my game 2 game plan should work very highly because I'm gonna want you to bring that Goldengo and potential Talonflame lead, and like we saw in that game 2. And just off leads, you could just potentially just win games with this Big 6 combination, especially if we're just trading damage here. And if I'm trading damage, Choppa, I think that I want to be on the end of Big 6 here. And congratulations to Matt Master with that wonderful victory.
Yeah, I think if anything, like that set and even the previous one for Map Master kind of showed like how rewarding it is when you're using Big Six. If you can just get your lead adjustments right, like baiting your opponent into thinking you're doing one of Charizard and Floette, and then just surprising them with the other one, tends to be something that's really tough to like kind of make up. To recover from getting your lead wrong against a team like this, just especially when both those Pokemon have such strong spread moves. Like if you're a Charizard player, it takes very little effort to be able to click things like Tailwind and just something like Heat Wave. If you are trying to go for defensive swap-ins against those, it's just going to be so tough to actually like survive and reposition against those Pokemon to put out, maybe you're something like your Lycanroc to go after the Charizard. And that's just not something that we really saw happen in that finals. It felt like Map Master was in control essentially the entire set.
Yeah, literally felt like every turn was just calculated and thought out super well on the end of Map Master. But second at the end of Ions is not nothing to shy away from. That's a very great accomplishment. There was so many great competitors and that played in this tournament. So congrats to them, and winning some cash to go along the way is never bad, right? But
Oh yeah,
yeah,
and I guess they're going to get a new showdown icon soon to kind of go along with the minion avatar that Carson won last year. So I'm really excited to see what kind of icon they end up creating for themselves.
Yeah, man, I need to get my hand. I need to start competing in these tours. No more commentating for me. I'm competing. I want to get an avatar too. But nonetheless, thank you for all those that were watching here for the last 2 days. Thank you for all the staff and the judges that were behind the scenes, and the players as well that were also streaming their runs. Michael DeBesti and others and friends. Thank you for guys for showing showing off VGC. I think we're in a wonderful era of this game just exploding at an immense rate, more than ever, Chuckle. So I'm very happy to see that we have so many tournaments and so many people loving and liking and watching and playing VGC at this time. This is a crazy time to be in from like a decade ago, from when we were playing, when we were just so niche. But it feels like now VGC is kind of on the top of the world a little bit. So with that comes great success with players that have been playing for as long as me and you, and newer ones as well that are getting into the game. So I'm very happy to be here casting with you and everybody else on the casting team for the Smogon VGC Major.
Yeah, lots of really exciting stuff going on here. I think it's like incredible that we have tournaments like this that have such large prize pools and are able to draw so many players coming out. I think this is only going to be the first of like many great grassroots that are going to happen over the summer, especially with, not everyone playing in Worlds, but we do have so many great TOs like the people working at Smogon that are putting on these grassroots that absolutely anyone can play in. Also, no matter where you are, can be online, can be in person, but just going to be a lot more great events like this coming out over the next couple of months. So I hope everyone stays tuned, stay enthusiastic about MB. Even if you're not playing in Worlds, there's going to be MC for you to look forward to in the fall. So just keep your eyes on the scene. Don't stop playing. Don't stop improving.
With that being said, thank you guys. Take care and see you next time.